Whether you like them or not, creepypastas shaped a generation of horror-loving teens and created icons that are still popular to this day. There are plenty of famous creepypastas. There's Godzilla, The Russian Sleep Experiment, Polybius, even though it's more of an urban legend, Lavender Town Syndrome, Teddy, 1999, Abandoned by Disney. In this video though, I want to focus on those stories that gave birth to specific characters and dossiers that became recurrent and popular in fanarts and fanfictions, many of whom were the protagonists of the fantasies and wet dreams of many creepypasta-loving teens. It's like an even worse version of the bad boy trope. These characters are a lot, so I tried my best to make a comprehensive list. There will be familiar faces and also some that you probably don't know if you weren't in the fandom. At the end of the video, I'll also talk about some comics and fanworks, so if there's characters specifically created for those, I'll talk about them along with the comic. Small warnings. I will say every name and nickname wrong. That is simply inevitable. And if I can find the pronouns of an author anywhere, I'll use they, them. I don't want to offend anyone. Here's a list with some trigger warnings. I'll do my best to censor stuff and to avoid dwelling on what isn't necessary. I won't go into details in the most gory stories, but it is a creepypasta video, so certain topics are inevitable. So, there's actually 3 Jeffs roaming around in the creepypasta community. The one that got stupidly popular in 2011, whose author is the user GameFuelTV. Then there's the one from the revamped version from 2015, wrote after the aforementioned one was deleted from the wiki because it was ass. The author is K-Bending Kellum, admin of the Creepypasta wiki. And finally, the one from 2008, the actual first mention of Jeff the Killer as a character, linked to this infamous image. The video is from the user Sessoir. It has a comedic tone and it's basically a slideshow, probably made with Movie Maker. The video mentions Jeff's brother, Liu, and at the end it reveals the reason behind Jeff's appearance. Apparently he was carrying acid to the bathroom to clean his bathtub, but he slipped on a soap bar and spilled the acid all over himself. He was taken to the hospital and, quote, he was never the same again. The story opens with Jeff and his family having just moved into a richer neighborhood. One of the neighbors, Barbara, comes by to introduce herself and her son Billy. Barbara then invites Jeff's family to Billy's birthday, and despite Jeff's later protests, he doesn't get a say. The next day, while Jeff is eating breakfast, he gets a weird feeling, a masterful foreshadowing of his latent homicidal tendencies. While he and Liu are waiting for the bus, the trio of bullies that every story needs is introduced. The absolute alpha leader of the pack is called Randy. There's a fight, Jeff reveals that he is the real alpha man, and he obliterates the bullies. Jeff and Liu run to school and the day passes. The next morning, Jeff finds 2 policemen talking to his mother about the fight. They're sure that he started it, unprompted. Jeff decides that it's pointless to try and explain himself. He's about to be arrested, but Liu barges in and takes the blame, having faked some injuries on his arm. Skipping to Saturday, it's Billy's birthday. Jeff wears his iconic white hoodie plus black jeans combo. Once at the party, he plays with the kids and has a good time until the bullies show up again. There's another fight, during which Jeff gets a bottle of vodka smashed on his head. Jeff kills Randy and then runs into the bathroom, followed by the other bullies. Because of the fighting, bleach falls on Jeff and Keith lights him on fire. Jeff passes out and wakes up in the hospital with his body wrapped up in bandages. His family visits, and apparently some witnesses magically showed up to the police to testify that Liu was indeed innocent. Some time passes and it's time to remove the face bandages. The family stares in horror as Jeff looks at himself in a mirror. His skin turned white, his lips are burned, and his hair has turned black. Because him being bald wouldn't have attracted many fangirls. Jeff loves the new face, he says that it's perfect and laughs uncontrollably. Jeff gets his clothes back and is ready to go back home. That same night, Jeff's mom wakes up to a sound coming from the bathroom where she finds Jeff, carving a smile into his cheeks with a knife. He also burned his eyelids so that he could see his new face forever. Jeff then kills both his mom and dad, and it's heavily implied that he also kills Liu. The story ends with Jeff's catchphrase, "Just go to sleep." This one is quite long, and there's even an uncut version that's even longer that I did not have the courage to read, so I'll heavily summarize it. The story opens with Jeff and his family having just moved into a richer neighborhood. Jeff and Lou go for a ride to explore the new surroundings. They go into a video store and bitch about the unloving marriage of their parents. Randy, Kit, and Troy are back in all their glory, fucking around with Jeff and Lou's bikes parked outside the store. Jeff tries to have a civil conversation, but things quickly escalate into a fight. The girl of the video store calls the police, and the brothers quickly retrieve their bikes, riding back home. Outside of their home, though, the police is already waiting for them. Jeff and Lou get scolded as neither their parents nor the police believe their side of the story. Still, they're let go with just a warning. The next morning, during breakfast, the shit parents keep being shit parents, and Lou is sent on to Marcy's place. A random Saturday morning, Jeff's mom decides to force her son to go and make up with Randy, under the probably false, these people are awful, promise that if things go smoothly then Lou can come back home. At Randy's house, everything does seem to go nicely, as Jeff and Randy both apologize for what happened. Turns out it was a trap though. The second they're left alone, Randy lures Jeff in the garage, where he shows him his dad's flare gun, loads it, and points it at him. As Jeff tries to leave, Troy and Kit block his way. Jeff gives in to his homicidal tendencies and a fight starts. The fight is stopped by Randy's mom returning home, and in a panic, Randy inadvertently shoots Jeff in the face. Jeff blacks out and wakes up later in a hospital, with Alfie's face covered in bandages. His parents keep being horrible, and we find out that Randy obviously lied about what happened. Before being released from the hospital, Jeff wants to see his face, and he does so alone. He's quite different from the 2011 Jeff. He's blind from an eye, and he has a big scar on one side of his face. The ride home is miserable, and the brothers are told to go to bed. That night, Jeff kills his parents, and this time it's clear that he lets Lou live, so that homicidal Lou can be canon, I guess. There isn't a properly written story about this Jeff. There's a summary of the major events that happened in his life that you can find on Software's DeviantArt. From what I could understand, after the acid incident that disfigured him, he starts to hate people because of the way they treat him. He becomes depressed, he loses his hair grow, and eventually he goes out only at night. At some point, Jeff fakes his death, he keeps murdering, and the media refers to the murderer as Jeff the Killer, for some reason. Eventually, the police finds out that Jeff Hodek is indeed alive, and he and Lou become fugitives. Jeff gets caught and put in an asylum, but he manages to escape. The brothers fake their identities and go live on a farm in Ohio. Sessoir is still active on DeviantArt, and he often responds to comments and questions regarding his Jeff. Regarding the origin of these images, there is already plenty of videos online that discuss all the theories and are still actively investigating. I suggest Care Theater's video. I'm sure Jeff the Killer games still get pumped out to this day, and they all pretty much suck, but some titles that I remember being popular back then were Go to Sleep, an RPG Maker game from 2014 by Talal Dev, in which you play as a random detective investigating on Jeff the Killer. My Dear Brother Jeff, another RPG Maker game from 2014 by Psyche Game Lab that follows more accurately the Creepypasta from 2011. Apparently the developer made a newer version later in 2014, but it's only in Spanish, so... Illusion Ghost Killer, a first-person game from 2013 by Incredible Games, in which the goal is to place 6 cameras around some sort of underground facility to investigate the weird things happening there. The weird things being Jeff. The game was pretty hard too, as Jeff would stay glued to the player's ass. Fans had speculated over Lou's fate way before it was made canon by the 2015 Jeff Creepypasta. In the 2011 version, it wasn't outright stated that Jeff murdered his brother. Many fangirls prefer to think he was spared, or that he survived, and so, Homicidal Lou was born. The original creator of Homicidal Lou is user VampireNode13. She also created a Tumblr page dedicated to Lou filled with info about the character. Here she shared Lou's story in a post dating back to 2012. The story starts when Jeff is already at the hospital, and Lou is doing everything he can to help him feel better. Jeff's bandages get removed, and while Lou tries to dissimulate, he's actually horrified. by both his brother's new face and personality. The night when Jeff kills his parents, Liu gets attacked too. Jeff cuts open his abdomen with his knife and squeezes his organs. Liu passes out and wakes up in a hospital, miraculously alive. We find out that a second personality formed inside Liu, ordering him to kill the nurse and leave the hospital. Liu does so. So, yeah, Vampire Note 13's Liu suffers from DID, Dissociative Identity Disorder, with his core identity being Liu and his alternate being Sully. I'm not a psychiatry expert and I don't know how legit this portrayal of DID is, but I know that linking certain mental disorders to crazy murderous villains always has problematic connotations, as mental disorders get stigmatized a lot already. Please remember that these were young teens writing for other young teens. And this is a story from 11 years ago. I stood there watching over as the For Jane the Killer, as for Jeff, exist different versions of the character in the fandom. The one that got popular, wrote by Pasta64 in 2012, the revamped version of Jane the Killer based on the revamped version of Jeff the Killer, wrote in 2017 by user Irish Tyranny, and finally, the one from the real first Jane the Killer creator, user The Lady Black Wolf, who wrote Jane's letter in 2012 before Pasta64 wrote her version. In 2014, she wrote her origin story. Jane Arkansas is a girl that lives in the neighborhood where Jeff's family moved in. From a window, she sees the fight between Jeff and the bullies at the bus stop. She screams, alarming her parents. Her parents drive Jane to school and ban her from ever speaking to Jeff. Jane agrees. The next day, Jane sees from a window the police car in front of Jeff's house and is shocked to see Liu being arrested. Jane starts to feel pity for Jeff and leaves him a note stating that she'll testify in Liu's favor. She signs the note with a J. Skipping to Saturday, Jane is home alone while her parents are at work and she can hear and see Billy's birthday party from her bedroom's window. She notices Jeff playing with the kids and the bullies disrupting the moment. Jane calls the police and while on the phone she hears the screams of Jeff being on fire. She grabs a portable fire extinguisher from the kitchen and barges into Billy's house, but when she sees Jeff laying on the floor, she faints. She wakes up in a hospital as she beat her head on the fire extinguisher. Jeff's parents come by to thank her and to invite her to dinner. Jane gets released from the hospital and is back to school, where she tells her friends about what happened. They make fun of her for having a crush on Jeff, crush that Jane denies. Some time passes and Jane notices Jeff's car in front of his house. She guesses that he is back home. When Jane sees from her window the new appearance of Jeff, she gets scared and faints. Are you okay, girl? When she wakes up, it's night, her parents aren't in the house, and she's wearing a gown that she was not wearing before fainting. In the kitchen, she finds a note that says, "Aren't you coming to dinner? Your friends are here too." Jane sees that the lights are on in Jeff's house and that he himself is staring at her from a window. As the phone line is cut off or something, Jane arms herself with a knife and goes to fight Jeff. When Jane sees the smile Jeff's carved into his face, she faints again. She wakes up in the dining room tied to a chair at the table, and at this lovely family dinner, there are also the corpses of Jane's parents, her friends, Jeff's parents, and Liu. In an attempt to make Jane beautiful, Jeff pours bleach and gas all over her and lights her on fire. Jane blacks out from the pain and wakes up weeks later in a hospital. She demands a mirror and stares at her face in disbelief. To rub salt on the wound, sadly she doesn't have Jeff's magical hair and is indeed bald. Jeff sends a package to the hospital for Jane, and inside she finds a mask, a wig, and a black dress along with flowers and a knife. That night she escapes from the hospital and goes to cry over her parents' graves. Jane gives herself a new identity, Jane Everlasting, and from that moment on her life purpose is to find and kill Jeff. The story ends with her catchphrase, "Don't go to sleep, you won't wake up." This one is pretty long, so I'll summarize heavily. The story opens at school with Jane staring at the poster of a masquerade that she can't wait to attend. Through a chit-chat between Jane, a girl that just moved in, and a friend, we find out that Jeff is a taboo subject and that he shouldn't be mentioned. We also find out that Jane's dad hits her and that he's like the mayor or something. We also find out that she's in the process of selling nudes of herself to a professor. Once the deal is over, Jane breaks down in tears in the parking lot and confesses what she did to her friend, who saves the day by retrieving the pictures, throwing the money at the professor's face. Then they leave. We find out that Jeff killed Jane's mom in front of her. Jane gets a dress for the masquerade, that's what the money was for. Some time passes and it's time to go to the ball. Jane and her friend dance for a while. The girl that just moved in, Tracy, barges in and slaps Jane. Apparently, Jane's dad coerced Tracy's mom into having sex with him to not get fired. And people are friendly with Jane solely to not upset her father. We find out that Jeff didn't kill Jane's mom, it was actually her dad who then blamed Jeff for it. Jane punches Tracy, the girl falls and hits her head, dying. Damn. Jane runs away from the ball back to her house. Her father comes home early, wasted, and Jane kills him. We find out he also sexually assaulted her. Jane gets arrested and the lawyer that represents her father's company comes by to save the day. He wants to cover up for everything. He already buried bodies and told cover-up stories, threatened the witnesses, and is ready to blame everything on Jeff. Jane isn't happy about this, but she doesn't get a say. Once she is released, she runs back to her house to find some evidence of his dad's wrongdoings. Lawyer man follows her, beats her with his gun, and ties her to a chair. He's ready to kill Jane when Jeff the killer, the man himself, interrupts. Jeff kills Lawyer Man and wonders what to do with Jane, as she's already dying from a gunshot wound. He decides to light her on fire. Her body is never found by the police, yet everyone thinks she is dead. Much time later, Jane's friend returns to the town for a nostalgia trip. Here she sees Jane, alive, but a demon, and Jane kills her. I'm not sure I understood this passage, honestly. The story ends with Jeff reading a note that Jane left him where she threatens to kill Leo before she kills him. Editing puking here. You can call me puking, by the way, I won't get mad. So whatever you think you made enough research, it's actually not enough at all. I found out that for some reason the 2017 version posted on the Creepypasta wiki is quite different from the one posted on the Jeff the Killer wiki, despite supposedly being written by the same person. The main differences are, there is no lawyer man, Jane's dad is murdered by Jeff, and Jeff takes out both of Jane's eyes before stabbing her in the heart and lighting on fire his old house. Also, it's clear that before dying, Jane made a deal with a demon? A Satan? I don't know. The first is a short creepypasta about a letter that Jane leaves to Jeff in which she states her animosity and her desire to catch him. The second is the long origin story of the Lady Blackpool's Jane. I'll summarize heavily. The story starts by establishing a lot of things. Jane's parents were killed by Jeff the Killer, she's the caretaker of her 13-year-old sister, she works at a pancake house, and she's low on money. One day, while at work, she notices an ad from the blood bank offering $150 to donate some blood. During the shift, arrives a weird customer described as Walter White with hair. While Jane is off cooking his food, we find out that the man is actually an FBI agent whose heart is set on finding Jeff. That evening, after work, Jane goes to donate her blood and gets the cash. The next day, Jane gets a call from the blood bank. Turns out, if she's up to donate more blood, she'll get paid $10,000. Jane accepts. After the second donation and on her way home, Jane gets stopped by two CIA agents. Jane gets escorted to the CIA headquarters, and apparently her blood is perfect for something. While leading her down an hallway, Jane notices 25 corpses of women lined up in a room. Instinctively, she attacks the agent, but is tackled and sedated. Jane wakes up, strapped to a chair in what seems to be an operating room. Apparently, because of her perfect health and history with Jeff, Jane is the perfect candidate for an experiment funded by the government that is supposed to help with catching the killer. Sure. Jane has her blood replaced by a serum called Liquid Hate, a very scientific name. She dies and is then revived. Jane's skin is now like pure white, and her hair and eyes are pure black. She's also much stronger, and in a blind rage, she assaults and kills many of the medics that were monitoring her. Girly Pop got turned into a Marvel mutant, she's strong as fuck, she can regenerate immediately, and she can read even the smallest text. Jane accepts her new life purpose, that is, to hunt down Jeff. She can finally go back home, and in doing so, she steals some clothes that she likes. Jane reunites with her younger sister and with her girlfriend/wife, Mary. On the Lady Blackwolf DeviantArt page, you can find much more about Miss Jane Richardson. The two most popular Jane the Killer images are this. This one was posted by PastaStalker64 at the end of the creepypasta, and the original is very easy to find. It's a cosplay photo by the Miss Shadow Lovely on DeviantArt. The second one was posted by the Lady Blackwolf along with Jane's letter. In the description it stated that the source image was found online and that the Lady Blackwolf herself photoshopped it. This is the original picture, it comes from a blog discussing vampires from 2007. Nina is quite an infamous character. Even her wiki page starts with a warning about how shitty her story is. What the fuck? Alegotic Twavel, the creator, got a lot of hate from the fandom, and the character got ridiculed. Female creepypasta characters in general were treated worse by the fandom. Fandom that was mostly made of girls, mind you. So, I guess when your brain is still developing, you get weirdly jealous of characters that don't exist. I don't know. Yes, Nina's story is very derivative from Jeff's 2011 creepypasta and not well written. But the hate the creator got over words on a screen is absolutely uncalled for. Keep in mind that she was only 13 when she wrote the story. Also, Alegotic Twavel is from Venezuela, so I don't know, maybe in Spanish it was written better. Anyway, there's two versions of Nina the Killer, both created by Alegotic Twavel, the one that got infamous from around 2012, 2013, and the revamped version from 2021. The story starts with some foreshadowing of how Nina will become obsessed with Jeff the Killer. Nina and their younger brother Chris just moved in a new town, and it's their first day of school. During lunch break, they're interrupted by the Mean Girls, the trio of bullies that every story needs. They get bullied, Chris gets beaten, Nina pulls out a knife she kept hidden somewhere, I don't wanna know where, and the fight ends. Later that day, Nina finds a note in her locker that says, "I know what you did. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. You're skillful, but dangerous." One random night, Chris gets kidnapped and beaten up again by the Mean Girls as some sort of revenge. Nina finds him and rushes him to the hospital. She also finds another note stating that she has a friend and is not alone. During yet another fight with the Mean Girls, Nina runs into an abandoned house to take refuge. She arms herself with a metal bar and kills the Mean Girls' leader in a scene that is maybe a reference to a scene from When They Cry. Maybe she kills the other bullies too, it's unclear, and she goes back home to give herself a makeover. Jeff manifests into her house with bleach and alcohol, and he sets Nina on fire with her consent. Nina blacks out and wakes up in a hospital, you know the drill. Her skin is now white and her hair is black, and she loves her new appearance. Nina gets released from the hospital, and that same night, her evil laughter wakes up her mother. The poor woman goes to check on her and watches in horror as Nina carved a smile into her cheeks and is in the process of sewing her eyelids open. Nina kills her mom and then her brother. The story ends with her catchphrase, "Go to sleep, my prince." So, I could find this version only in Spanish on Alegotic Twavel's DeviantArt, even though the description says English version coming soon. Maybe she didn't have time to translate it, I don't know. But I can show you her new design. And apparently this version of Nina really wants to kill Jeff. She looks very mercenary-like. So, before we move on, while I was browsing Alegotic Twavel's DeviantArt again to make sure I didn't miss the newer Nina creepypasta, I stumbled upon this journal, in which she goes deeper into the online harassment she received for writing Nina. It's a bit of a heavy read, but I suggest giving it a look. I'll link it in the description or in a pinned comment. Or something. Alright, I'll cut this short. You know who Slenderman is. Slenderman is the most iconic and famous internet horror icon ever. It's got games, it's got a movie, it's got fantastic fanworks, it's got real-life crimes. Created by Victor Surge and shown to the public in 2009 on Something Awful, his design was simple yet creepy and recognizable. His backstory was a complete mystery, despite his weird interest for children. He was the perfect character for a community that couldn't wait to flesh him out. What you may not know, though, is that the fandom decided to give Slenderman brothers. They're mostly parody characters, not meant to be taken too seriously, but they were still quite popular and recurrent in fanarts and fanfictions. As the wiki page states, the idea of these parody versions of Slenderman being all related is entirely made up by the fandom and not by the singular authors of these OCs. Slenderman was created by Neil Cizuriga for a parody video he posted in 2010. Neil is an American comedian, actor, filmmaker, singer, musician, songwriter, puppeteer, artist, animator, and game developer. Jesus! He's famous for his Potter Puppet Pal series, a puppet parody of Harry Potter, and for his very weird music.
Two trucks having sex. Two trucks having sex.
In the video, Tiffany and Becky are hanging out, having a picnic, when suddenly Slenderman appears behind them, surprising the girls. He gives them flowers, they all dance, and at the end he throws glitter at them. Slenderman was born from a photo posted by user Conjured Charisma on Tumblr in 2012, showing a mannequin in a clothing store entitled Slenderman's Casual Friday. The name Slenderman, however, comes from user I Lack Tact in response to another comment. Slenderman's thing is that he is trendy and he really hates Crocs. Slenderman was created by user Arcanine Ryu on DeviantArt in 2012. They provide a reference sheet with some backstory and some drawings. In the description of the post, they explain the reasoning behind the creation of a Slenderman. While browsing Slenderman fanart, I stumbled on a conversation between people who were annoyed at all the Slenderman porn there was. I suggested that people use sexual Slenderman instead, recalling this picture of various Slenderman variations. I was asked who that was, so I showed them the picture, but that got me thinking about this character, flashing him out in my head, thinking of how he would act, especially around the other Slenders. And I actually began to feel that he was a worthwhile character to explore. Already I could think of memes, funny comics, awkward parodies, so I figured it would be best to just go ahead and record the basics for you guys. Hopefully he can help take some of the Rule 34 strain off Slenderman and maybe add a bit to the cartoon Slenderman mythos. From the reference sheet, we know that the Slenderman prefers to hang around in cities rather than in forests, he goes after teenagers and adults, and his spit has healing properties. His modus operandi is he offers his victims, mostly women, a rose, and if they accept, they get, you can imagine. If they don't, Slenderman will stalk them and still try to lure them. Let's just move on. First of all, what is a proxy? Proxies are people that are controlled or under the influence of Slenderman, and are therefore forced to follow his orders. Slenderman isn't the only entity with proxies in the Creepypastaverse. Zalgo is another demon with minions, the most recurrent being Shadow Lurker, but we'll talk about both of them later.
Here I come. Let's take a look at this situation.
Mask and Hoodie come from the 2009 ARG and YouTube series Marble Hornets, created by Troy Wagner and Joseph DeLage. And contrary to popular belief, they are not proxies. The thing is, in Marble Hornet, proxies are in canon, and there's no mention of them. And the main antagonist, Slenderman, isn't even called the Slenderman. It's called the Operator. It's a creature heavily based on the Slenderman, but they ain't the same. Even the names Mask and Hoodie came from the fandom. That being said, these characters went through a severe fangirlification process. As a result, the Mask and Hoodie that got popular among fangirls were quite different from their counterparts, Tim and Brian. They're different enough to be considered as separate characters and called proxies, as long as you're aware of their origin. The main obvious difference is that Tim and Brian are like adults, while their fangirlified versions often aren't. Also, Mask and Hoodie are portrayed as loyal servants of Slenderman by the fandom, while in Marble Hornets, spoiler, Tim actively works against the Operator. Actually, everyone tries to work against the Operator. And in the end, he even kills Brian. Tiki Toby was created by user Castaway on DeviantArt. He published his first drawing in 2012 and his origin story in 2013. The story starts with Toby and his mom driving back home through the woods. Toby had some sort of accident, and we're told that he has a condition that prevents him from feeling pain. We're also told that he was bullied in school because of his Tourette syndrome. He has uncontrollable tics, and Tiki Toby is the name used by his bullies to mock him. We find out that Toby was in a car crash with his sister. He survived and she didn't. Toby and his mom reach their home and they see a man standing in the doorway. It's Toby's dad, and he sucks. That night, Toby can't sleep and looks out of the window, where he sees a tall figure standing under a street lamp. It's Slenderman. Toby's ears start to ring and he blacks out. He wakes up the next day, in his own bed, and he starts being generally weird for the next days. He chews on his hands, he has memory loss, he hallucinates. Toby's mom takes him to a psychiatrist, I think, and during the visit he sees Slenderman again, outside of the window. That night, he has a nightmare starring his sister's corpse and Slenderman. When he wakes up, he goes into the kitchen where he sees his dad smoking. He gets possessed by the Slenderman and stabs him to death. His mother screams in horror at the sight, and Toby runs away from the house, stealing 2 hatchets. In an attempt to kill himself, he lights on fire the trees around him, while a police car is arriving at his house. Slenderman appears to him once again and, takes full control of his mind. Or something. The story ends with Toby becoming a proxy. So, what's up with the drama? I was having a difficult time researching what the fuck happened with Castaway. Things were a bit all over the place. Some stuff was deleted and reachable only through the Wayback Machine. Also, it might seem crazy what I'm about to say, but I wasn't particularly into Tiki Toby during my creepypasta phase, so I didn't have much prior knowledge of him. Thankfully, I stumbled upon a very clear and comprehensive post from this year wrote by user Eardump on Tumblr. I highly suggest reading it, and I'll link it in somewhere. To summarize the events, Castaway created Tiki Toby when he was very young. He would draw him in fanarts even before his origin story was published. He made an Ask Creepypasta Monsters Tumblr page that gave birth to comics like this one from March of 2013 that got pretty famous. Once Castaway published Toby's origin story, which was much darker in tone, he noticed how the fandom wasn't really able to separate Toby's actual personality from the one established by the Steelier comics. He grew exponentially dissatisfied with how his character was being treated, and in an attempt to clarify the more mature nature of Toby, he made a redesign in February of 2014. Here we can see that Toby is clearly older, he has a little beard and a huge gush on his face. Castaway also states in the description that he has no more interest to draw creepypasta related things, and that proxies are their own thing. Apparently, Toby became insanely popular in the fandom around July of 2014. There were some issues with ships. Tiki Toby was canonically shipped with Clockwork. We'll talk about it later. Castaway had already expressed his desire to see Toby only shipped with Clockwork, but fangirls did whatever the fuck they wanted, obviously. At the end of 2014, he expressed the general tiredness he felt for the community, and he admitted that I wasn't prepared for my character to become popular on the internet. I really wasn't. I never thought it would happen, and I'm still not good at dealing with it. In fact, I suck at it. It's true. Please know that he was only 15 at this point. Skipping to 2020, the second episode of his podcast On the Porch talked about Tiki Toby and received negative reactions. I didn't see it, and the video is private now, so... The timeline for this part of the drama confuses me a bit, honestly. Apparently, the podcast caused some misconceptions. Castaway made some Instagram stories to clarify some things, and from what I could understand, even though the oldest Toby's version will forever exist, he makes clear that every future possible reboot of the character will not be related to the Creepypastaverse, in any way. And while he still enjoys fanarts of Toby, he wishes that people would stop profiting off of a character that isn't theirs. Between August 19th and 20th, though, Castaway posted these 3 Instagram stories where he states that he's working on a reboot project of Tiki Toby called Chickadee Springs. Here is where I'm a bit confused, as Castaway already mentioned this as a discarded project in an Instagram story that I thought came before these ones, but maybe he just picked the project up again, I don't know. In the last one of these stories, he asks people to refrain from doing any sort of fanwork starring Toby. Any version of Toby. In the first days of October, he posted this story and this tweet, in which he again asks people to stop making fanwork of Toby as he's trying to copyright him properly. And I think this is specifically what made the fandom mad. On April 25th of 2021, Castaway posted a new redesign of Toby called Tobias Rogers. I love this design. There isn't a single thing that I don't like. It's so good. Sadly, the fangirls didn't like him. Eardump says that many people weren't pleased with the redesign due to thinking the reason for it was to invalidate the previous one. I think it's because the 12-year-old girlies that are having their creepypasta phase now didn't find him hot enough and felt betrayed. But who knows? The redesign is no longer on Gris Doll's Instagram. Too bad. During this period, Castaway was also accused of a bunch of stuff that was denied by his sister on TikTok. His sister also made this TikTok.
Hi, so a lot of people have been asking this question. I just wanted to make a video response so it could potentially reach more people who are wondering. The short answer is yes, you can still draw and cosplay the original Tiki Toby design. Now, I know my brother tried to remove Tiki Toby from the fandom as a whole a while ago. And now we see that's just unrealistic. Like, a lot of people were very touched and they just love that story, and that's totally fine. Like, we appreciate how many people connect with his creation, you know, that's really wonderful. So trying to remove him from the fandom was just a response in anger because a lot of people have just been taking his creation and running with it, not to mention people have been trying to profit off of something he made. So at the end of the day, everyone's free to draw and cosplay Tiki Toby as much as they want, but please don't try to make any money off of him.
So, at this point, I wanted to encourage you to go follow Gris Doll's Instagram, but there aren't any posts anymore. So, it's a pity. Gris Doll is a very talented artist. I love their style, so I don't know. I wish them well. Editing puking again. So, yesterday, Gris Doll posted this on their Instagram. I have been feeling bad, and I have taken down all my art amidst personal crisis, and now I do not know what I'm doing, but I have decided to pursue my dreams of taking up clownery, character acting, writing music, studying wizardry, and not losing my mind. I hope to eventually build up the confidence to share my drawings again, someday, but all things in time, I guess, or whatever, I don't know. Hope you all are doing good and keeping the reads level astronomical. Kate the Chaser comes from the game Slender the Arrival, made by Blue Isle Studios and released in 2013. The game is a properly developed version of Slender the 8 Pages, and its story was written by the Marble Hornets cast. The game is a first-person horror adventure where you mostly walk and run. It has 3 main antagonists: Demon Child, Person in a Hoodie, and Slenderman. The game is fine, it has its moments, and I think it manages to create a creepy atmosphere. I'll spoil the plot now, so skip here if you don't want spoilers. You play as Lauren, and you're driving to your friend Kate's place to help her sell her house. Upon arriving, Kate's house is empty and there are signs of a struggle. In her bedroom, the walls are covered in drawings and the window's glass is broken. At this point, we hear the piercing scream of a woman coming from the woods. Thinking it might be Kate, Lauren runs outside, and the adventure begins. Through notes, clues, and tapes, we discover that the demon child is Charlie Madison, whose missing poster can be found in multiple locations. We learn that Kate and her friend CR are having visions of the Slenderman. At some point, CR starts to investigate Charlie's disappearance, and we find out that Slenderman has been stalking the Madison family for generations. Through some flashbacks, it's revealed that Charlie was indeed kidnapped by the Slenderman, and that Kate was possessed and turned into a proxy. She is the person in a hoodie. At the very end of the game, Lauren finds CR's burned body, and a recording of him and Kate. It's implied he planned a double suicide as a way to be free from Slendy, but Kate couldn't do it. Lauren gets kidnapped by Demon Child, and later killed, maybe, by Kate. In October of this year, a remake of the game called Slender the Arrival 10th Anniversary Update, made in Unreal Engine 5, was released, and along with the better graphics, a new level was added. Rouge was created by user LazyCatLady on DeviantArt, but sadly their page is no longer active. In 2015, LazyCatLady put the character for sale in a post on their Affinity account. Rouge was sold to user Canage. In a comment from November 2022, he states that he's no longer active on DeviantArt. Apparently Rouge's info can be found on his Toy House account. Can someone explain to me how Toy House works? Because apparently you need a code to register, but to have said code you have to pay the premium membership from your account page? Account that you don't have? Because to create it, you need the code? There's a thread where people ask for codes, but these people have accounts and are in fact asking codes for their friends. Do I need a friend on Toy House? What if I don't have any friends? LazyCatLady wrote a short story starring Rouge called Don't Look Up. The story starts with a description of Rouge as she is guarding the perimeter of an unspecified territory under Slenderman's order. She describes her clothes and her main weapons, gloves with curved metal claws attached at the fingertips. Rouge's demeanor is described as animal-like. She walks on all fours, she often climbs on trees to attack her victims from above, and she screeches like a coyote. A random man enters the woods searching for his missing child. Rouge toys with him for a bit, she says her catchphrase, "Don't look up or you'll regret it," and she kills him in a very gruesome way. Nurse Anne was created in October of 2013 by user Yaguyi on DeviantArt. The first post about her is a reference sheet. She looks a bit Silent Hill-ish, and apparently she died by being stabbed in the heart. On the same day, Yaguyi also posted the older group, where Anne is portrayed alongside Masky and Slenderman, establishing that she is a proxy. 4 days later, she posted the Life and Death, where we can see how Anne looked like when she was still human. Nurse Anne is shipped with Masky and portrayed with the other proxies in a couple of fanarts. In November of 2013, Yaguyi posted The Battle with the Boss, and in the description there's some backstory. Apparently Anne was hiding in an abandoned hospital when Slenderman found her. He really wanted her to become a proxy, but Anne resisted. They fought, and even if Anne didn't lose, she still accepted to work for the Slenderman. In December of 2013, Yaguyi posted a very enigmatic drawing of Nurse Anne titled Number 666 Experiment. So, apparently she was experimented on? In March of 2014, Yaguyi posted Don't Worry, and we get to see what Anne is hiding under her hair. The last drawing of Nurse Anne was posted in November of 2016, and it's Halloween themed. Yaguyi hasn't posted on DeviantArt since 2017, and to this day there isn't an origin story for Nurse Anne, so this is all we got. Laughing Jack has been around since 2011 and was created by user Snafbomb on DeviantArt. He wrote 2 creepypastas starring Laughing Jack, one where he's the antagonist and one with his origin story, posted in 2013. I think they were both present on the Creepypasta wiki, but they have since been removed, I think around 2015, both because of the Snafbomb drama and because the stories are edgy gorefests. Laughing Jack is one of the most popular creepypasta characters. I guess Snafbomb's cosplays in particular were popular among the fangirls. I'm sure you've seen these photos if you had a creepypasta phase. In the story, we follow the point of view of 5-year-old James' mom. James always plays by himself and has an active imagination, so when he describes his new friend as a giant clown called Laughing Jack to his mom, she assumes he made up an imaginary friend. That night, the mother has a nightmare. She finds herself in an abandoned amusement park and is hypnotized by Pop Goes the Weasel. She gets surrounded by horribly disfigured and mutilated children, because, of course, who assault and then kill her. The next day, the mom dozes off on the couch, and when she wakes up, she finds James in the front yard, eating mysterious candies. The mom becomes nervous, but James insists that they come from Laughing Jack. That night, the poor woman is woken up by a sound coming from the kitchen. When she gets there, she finds the dog hanging by the ceiling light with the stomach stuffed with candies and the room trashed. James screams and the mom runs upstairs. James' bedroom has been trashed too, and the child is terrified. The mom seeks refuge in the neighbor's house and calls the police, but it's useless. The next day, the mom sets up a baby monitor in James' room and leaves a knife on her nightstand, instead of just sleeping with him, which seems more logical to me, but follows one of the edgiest scenes ever wrote in a creepypasta. I'll spare you. Let's just say that Laughing Jack frames the mom for the murder of James. We're in London in the year 1800 and it's Christmas Eve. Isaac is a 7-year-old child with no friends, his mom is very strict, and his dad is an alcoholic and a rapist. Isaac's misery attracts a guardian angel who, instead of vaporizing his horrible dad, he sends him a gift. The gift is a jack-in-the-box housing Laughing Jack, a colorful clown whose personality is designed to perfectly match Isaac's. Isaac tries to convince his mom that Laughing Jack is real, but it turns out that the clown is forced to hide from others. 3 months pass, and while Isaac and Jack are playing in the backyard, the clown kills the neighbor's cat by accident. Isaac laughs about it, cause he's a weird little shit, and he throws the cat's corpse back in the neighbor's garden, hoping to not get caught. He does get caught, precisely an hour later, and is sent off to a boarding school. Jack goes back into his box and Isaac promises he'll be back for him. Years passes and Jack's colors fade into black and white. The dad kills the mom while drunk, he is sentenced to death, and so the now 20 years old Isaac inherits the house. Isaac completely forgot about Jack, so the box is still left untouched. One evening, while drunk, he brings a girl home. Was that a thing in 1813? Isaac tries to have sex, she refuses, he gets angry and tries to, he fails and murders her. He disposes of the body through very gruesome descriptions. Isaac then builds a chair with the lady's bones and skin. That is hilarious. He also crafts a mask out of wood that resembles the Danny mask. We also learn his full name, Isaac Lee Grossman. Very funny coming from Snuff Bomb. Isaac kills a child, because we just gotta win the edgy bingo card. You have no idea how much I'm summarizing. These scenes are like, what the fuck was I reading when I was 12? He kills a blind granny and a little girl, and during all these murders, Laughing Jack's personality has been adjusting to Isaac's new personality. Finally, the shelf holding Jack's box falls, and Isaac inadvertently frees him. The clown obviously tortures and murders Isaac. He takes his intestines out, blows into them, and makes a dog-shaped balloon. What the fuck? So, the Snuff Bomb drama. Snuff Bomb is allegedly a racist and a general creep. He would message minors on Skype, flirt with them, and do sexual acts while on call. He was very jealous of his character and ready to accuse others of copying him, and he had a drinking problem that made him lash out. All of this went down in 2014. Many victims came forward with their stories on a Tumblr blog called Snuff Bomb Victim Awareness, that sadly was deleted due to the harassment the creator received from Snuff's fangirls. Luckily, user SnuffBoob created their own Tumblr blog, now going by the same name, and they managed to save some of the evidence. On SnuffBoob page, you can find some of the victims' stories organized. Keep in mind that this drama unraveled 9 years ago, so some of the links don't work anymore. SnuffBomb's DeviantArt page is still up, but has been turned into an archive, so all his responses and journals are gone. He also deleted his Tumblr back in 2014. In 2015, he had a Twitter, but he's no longer active, and I think the juicier stuff is no longer there. I mean, I found this, but I highly suggest going on SnuffBoob's page if you want to know more. These are the trigger warnings. Some of the stories are very heavy. Just to be clear, you won't see a video in 4K of Snuff Bomb raping someone. It's mostly stories told by the victims, but they all show recurrent patterns very typical of a creep. Snuff Bomb also sucked at defending himself. I mean, he did have an army of feral fangirls on his side, so it's not like he had to, but he would respond to the allegations with sarcastic remarks or by trying to fish for pity. This type of response reminded me of Yandere a lot. He was also an absolute asshole towards Madame Macabre, going as far as commissioning a drawing of Jeff murdering one of her characters. And for what? I don't know, probably out of spite, because Laughing Jack wasn't in the Seer, the project that Madame Macabre was leading at the time, even though he was working with her on that project, but that's speculation on my part. Madame Macabre made this post in March of 2014 about the situation. While researching, I also stumbled upon this tweet from October of 2021, which then led me to these tweets from October of 2021. Where Steve is shown having inappropriate conversations with a 17-year-old. The original account that posted these screenshots is now deleted because of unrelated reasons. So I messaged that person on her new account to ask for permission to post those screens. I also asked her how old Steve was at the time, and she responded that she thinks he was 26/27. So just do not engage with Snuff Bomb/Steve. Laughing Jill is like the gender-bent version of Laughing Jack and was created by user Sabrina Nightmaren on DeviantArt with Snuff Bomb's permission. Her first appearance is a reference sheet posted in 2012. In the description there's also her backstory and some generic info such as her favorite weapon being a chainsaw. Laughing Jill also has a big crush on Laughing Jack. The story takes place during Victorian times. Jill is the magical clown friend of 6-year-old Mary and can only be seen by her. Mary plays with Jill for years until her parents start to question her sanity. At the age of 12, Mary is sent to an asylum, and while Jill is waiting for her, her colors fade into black and white. An indefinite amount of time passes. Mary is temporarily released to, test if she still has visions. Mary sees Jill and goes completely mad. A doctor shoots her, and Jill goes mad too. Then there's a couple of edgy scenes in which Jill kills the doctor and Mary's mom. A few years pass by and Jill meets Laughing Jack. She attacks him, they fight for a bit until they realize that they're from the same species, and that's it. In 2014, Sabrina Nightmare posted a redesign of Jill, changing her colorful version from rainbow to shades of pink and purple. Nowadays, Sabrina Nightmare is active on her Instagram page. Candy Pop and Candy Cane are a duo of cannibal jester siblings created by user Dance of Angels on DeviantArt. The first appearance of Candy Cane comes from February of 2012 in a drawing titled Candy Cane Introduction. In the description, it's already established that she is a cannibal. The first appearance of Candy Pop comes from September of 2012 in a drawing called Candy Pop Judy. In the description, it's stated he is a gender-bent version of Candy Cane and her twin. The first appearance of them together comes from June of 2013, in a drawing titled The Cannibal Jester Twins. In the description, there's a short story that narrates how the twins travel through many kingdoms and served many royal families as jesters, solely to eat their children. Dance of Angels posted the first Candy Pop and Candy Cane creepypasta in September of 2013. In 2015, a creepypasta about the origins of Candy Pop called The Darkest Truth is posted on Proxies' account, with whom Dance of Angels shares many projects. The protagonist of the story is a young princess called Alexa, whose kingdom is honest and righteous. Alexa's mom tells her a story of how humans got corrupted by greed and stole the light from the world, leaving everything in darkness. That night, while Alexa is going to the bathroom, she hears giggling in her brother's study. She takes a peek and sees Candy Pop and Candy Cane. There were supposed to be other parts of the story, but I couldn't find them. This one is quite long, so I'll do my best to summarize it. The story starts with our protagonist, who is blind, complaining about a recurring nightmare in which he's haunted by a tall black mass. When Adarian, the protagonist, wakes up terrified, he calls for his bitchy grandma, who just hates him. She gives him his pills and leaves. Adarian then reaches the kitchen for a glass of water, and someone puts a glass into his hand. The guy calls his grandma again, but no one responds. We find out that Granny hates him because his mom died in childbirth. Adarian starts to feel as if the walls are closing in on him and panics. Apparently it was another nightmare, or some sort of hallucination he had while being awake. His grandma slaps him and throws her holy water at him. While Adarian is cleaning up glass shards from the floor, he injures himself. He places the injury under running water, dozes off, wakes up, rubs his eyes, and oh my god, he can see. Adarian stares in horror as his own shadow begins to transform into a tall, clawed monster. He runs out of the house and gets lost in the woods. The black mass returns and toys with him. Adarian manages to run back into his house, he loses his vision again and reaches his grandma, only to realize she has been killed. His neighbor Jason barges in, having heard the screams, and Adarian does a terrible job in convincing him he's not crazy. The police arrives almost simultaneously and Adarian gets arrested and then put into a mental hospital. After 5 years, he gets released as new evidence has come to light, deeming him innocent. He is also offered a laser surgery to regain his sight. With his sight back, Adarian goes back to his old house. He goes into the attic and finds a silver bell on the floor and a doll on a shelf, holding a cassette tape. He plays the tape and it's a recording made by his mother addressed to his grandma. We find out that Adarian's mom really wanted a baby, she prayed every day, but since God wasn't delivering, she turned to a demon. Said demon calls himself Night Terrors, and upon making a deal with him, he'll steal your body, soul, and ability to sleep. Night Terrors reveals himself to Adarian and takes the appearance of Candy Pop. Adarian gets abducted and brought to Candy Pop's personal hell. Poor guy. In February of 2016, Danes of Angels posted a journal in which they announced a reboot of Candy Cane. The newer version will be called the Cannibal, and she'll become Candy Pop's half-sister. The day later, they posted the new appearance of Cannibal. Currently, Danes of Angels split the Candy Pop Creepypasta character from the Candy Pop present in their biggest project, the Umbra series, which is like a big universe they're creating alongside Promptus. Editing puking again, I realized I completely forgot about another Candy Pop story called The Purple Balloon, made in 2015, I think. The protagonist is trying to save her dad from her abusive stepmom, and while escaping, they crash the car. The protagonist sees Candy Pop, and the jester is really persistent in trying to give her a purple balloon. When she accepts it, she starts to float. The protagonist pops the balloon by accident, and she wakes up to her dad calling her name. I think the implication is that holding onto the balloon would have killed her, and possibly trapped her into Candy Pop's world. At the hospital, everything seems normal until a doctor enters the girl's room holding a purple balloon. The doctor is Candy Pop, and basically it means that he'll never leave her alone. April Fool's was created by Promptus in 2013. I couldn't find much about her other than these fan arts made by Promptus. I remember she was shipped a lot with Candy Pop, but that's pretty much it. Jason the Toymaker was created by user Chrysantil on DeviantArt, and he's been around since 2013. Currently, his earliest drawing is The Past, from March of 2017. There's a bunch of Jason the Toymaker's art from like 2014 to 2016 that is no longer on Chrysantil's page. Maybe Chrysantil simply didn't like them anymore, or maybe it has something to do with this. In the Home tab, under a comment asking why Jason has been ditched, user Antyahdindin responds, Snuffbomb used his fans to attack Chrysantil, claiming Jason was ripping off LJ. No joke, he has old videos telling people that Jason and even Candy Pop were rip-offs. Given his fans, especially back then, are very much either minors like us or impressionable, easily influenced, they would message and harass Chrysantil over Jason's looks. That's awful. In 2017, Jason's origin story was posted by Chrysantil's friend Evie Darkrose on the Jason the Toymaker group. The story starts with Jason staring at the corpse of the girl he just killed by accident during a fight. He pushed her and she fell, beating her head on some furniture. According to Jason, the fight happened because the girl lied about her puppet being defective just to get a new one for free, because Jason has a shop where he sells the puppets he makes. The man hides the body into a large snake-shaped puppet, then he ponders about why things turned out this way, and he thinks of Amelia, his childhood friend. When Jason was a child, his parents were very strict and toys were forbidden in his house. Even so, Jason decides to craft his own wooden toys, and he keeps them hidden at school. One day, a little girl named Amelia notices him playing with them. Amelia and Jason start a toxic friendship. Jason is very possessive and manipulative. He wants to feel important for someone in response to his parents' lack of affection. He isolates Amelia by causing accidents and being violent towards the other kids that would talk to her. Their toxic relationship continues into adulthood. Jason becomes a toy maker and his parents disown him as they think it's a stupid job. One day, Amelia visits Jason in his shop and he confesses to be the one behind one of her most unpleasant memories. When they were younger, Amelia had a crush on a boy from a different class, and one of her friends suggested her what to write in a letter for him that she would have delivered in Amelia's place as a favor. Said letter disappeared from Amelia's backpack and was attached on a board. The boy she liked watched as his classmates made fun of her confession. However, the letter wasn't signed with her name, but with the name of her friend. The friend decided to change school because of the never-ending teasing, and Amelia always felt bad about it. Amelia gets very mad and leaves the store. At home, she comes to terms with the toxicity of their relationship and decides to never visit him again. A month passes as Jason works on a gift for Amelia, hoping to be forgiven. a wooden music box with a puppet resembling himself inside. Jason visits Amelia, but her mother gets in the way. The woman remembers how Jason killed Amelia's canary when they were children, and she dismisses him. Amelia refuses the gift, Jason gets angry, he makes her cry, and goes away. Coming back to present day, Jason just hid a corpse into a puppet. Amelia knocks on the shop's door, wanting to clear things up with him. Jason confesses the murder, and the woman suggests that he turns himself in. They fight, Jason overpowers her, even though she manages to stab him in the heart with a screwdriver. Apparently, the puppet he meant to give to her became his heart, and he intends to give it to someone worthy. A magic door appears on the wall, Jason enters it and leaves Amelia in the shop, sparing her life. The doll maker was created by user Chisa Yokai on DeviantArt in 2013. He makes his first appearance in a drawing titled The Doll Maker. In December of 2013, Chisa Yokai published 3 stories dedicated to the character, and in January of 2014 they posted his reference sheet. In the description there's an update dated 2017 stating that they're working on a new one. I couldn't find it, but the latest Dollmaker fanart on their page is from December of 2018 and it doesn't look different design-wise. The story is set in Russia and it starts with 9-year-old Vine, admiring his father, who's a very talented doll maker. One day, a rich businessman, Gier, commissions a doll, but once Vine's father realizes that it's gonna be a sex doll, he refuses. Gier gets so mad that he hires people to murder the man. The doll maker's house is set on fire and he dies to save his son. In the wreckage, Vine finds a pink glass doll eye and he keeps it. The people hired by Gier go back to the crime scene and they kidnap Vine. Gier keeps him in captivity for 3 years, treating him like an object, and gross stuff is implied. One night, Vine rebels and kills Gier, stabbing him with a pen in the neck. He escapes and starts a doll-making business, following in his father's footsteps. Soon, plastic and porcelain couldn't satisfy him anymore. Vine kills teen Emily Ryder and through some mutilations he turns her into a doll, deeming the murder as a work of art. Emily is the first of a long trail of murders. Before the murder started, in an attempt to become beautiful like his dolls, he gouges one of his eyes out and replaces it with a pink glass doll eye he has been keeping since he was 9. He also stitches half of his mouth into a smile but can't finish the job due to the pain. The story ends with his catchphrase, "Let me make you beautiful." The story gives more details about what happened with Emily Ryder. It's already dark and the girl is walking back home after studying all day at the library. She finds a beautiful doll on the sidewalk and the doll maker reaches her from behind. He's been very nice until Emily catches a glimpse of his face and gasps. 'Cause you know, the eye and the stitching. The girl tries to run but is captured and put to sleep with chloroform. Follows a gory description of Vine turning her into a doll. The story ends again with his catchphrase. The story starts with our protagonist running to the bus stop after some last-minute Christmas shopping. She doesn't look forward to it though, as only a couple of weeks earlier her little sister Amy went missing. The protagonist notices a beautiful doll sitting on the bench with her. She picks it up and the doll maker reaches her. Exactly like with Emily, Vine is being calm and nice, maybe a bit creepy. The protagonist sees his face and tries to run away, but the man catches her and puts her to sleep. She wakes up before Vine could paralyze her and she runs past him. She finds herself in an abandoned apartment and breaks through a door thinking it will lead her outside. That is not the case. Instead, the protagonist finds her little sister, Amy, dollified. The doll maker reaches her and the story ends, once again, with his catchphrase. I suggest following Chisa Yokai on DeviantArt or on Instagram because their art is stunning.
Not long ago and not far away, I put such a sad...
The Pianist was wrote and posted by user Rempen on DeviantArt on September of 2013. The Pianist isn't the most popular character out there, but in 2015, user Madame Macabre dedicated a song to him, featuring the musician Miyuji. The song currently has around 1,800,000 views. The story starts with the protagonist, the pianist, bitterly stating that deals with the devil always end up bad. The man had money, a nice house, charm, he had everything you could wish for, minus Alice, a beautiful woman who was his exact opposite. She was fine living modestly in a small apartment, she wanted long-term relationships, and she loved the piano. This woman didn't even know this man existed, while he was obsessed with her. To win her over, the man decides to learn how to play the piano, but he sucks ass. So he learns how to summon demons instead. He promises him his soul and signs the demon contract without even reading it. I mean, sure, you're just selling your soul, no big deal. The pianist becomes a stellar composer and his music is just great. One night, he performs in the local theater and Alice is present. She falls in love with his music and the two start to talk. Sadly, Alice and many of those who came to listen to the pianist become progressively weaker, and eventually they die. The pianist, desperate, confronts the demon and finally reads the contract. Turns out, the deal did give him an amazing talent, but the music he created was destined to bring misfortune and death to those who heard it. Here the story ends. The ending in Madame Macabre's song is a bit different, as the pianist joins the demon he summoned, turning into a demon himself. Bloody Painter was created by user Dilucat on DeviantArt. His first appearance on her page is a reference sheet from October of 2013. On the same day, she also posted his first creepypasta and another fanart starring his catchphrase, "Don't be excited about tomorrow, because there will be no tomorrow." Alright. In November of 2013, Dilucat posted the first page of a comic adaptation of Bloody Painter's creepypasta. The comic was finished in a couple of months. In the fandom, Bloody Painter is friends with the puppeteer and canonically shipped with Judge Angels. We'll talk about both of them later. In December of 2013, Dilucat posted another story about Bloody Painter, and in July of 2014, she posted the first page of its comic adaptation. This adaptation was left unfinished. In a journal from April of 2016, Dilucat expressed the desire to separate Bloody Painter from the creepypasta fandom. And in August of the same year, she posted the first page of the Bloody Painter alternate universe Moonlight City that was left unfinished. Bloody Painter made his comeback into the Creepypastaverse with a new story posted on October of 2017. The story is set in 1994 and it starts with a description of 14-year-old Helen. He has dark circles under his eyes, his hair is a mess, he draws a lot and he doesn't like to socialize. This description is brilliant as it represents like the 90% of the fandom. Helen is characterized as someone who doesn't like to be in other people's business. He doesn't help Tom, a classmate that gets bullied a lot, even if he feels bad for him. He doesn't help Judy when she loses her watch. He doesn't explain himself when said watch shows up in his bag and people start calling him a thief. Helen becomes the new target of bullying. Ban, another one of his classmates, steals his notebook and tears some of the pages. Helen punches him and a fight starts. Helen gets beaten up pretty badly, and when the teacher asks what happened, he responds that he fell from the stairs, like a wife from the 50s. One night, Tom starts messaging him on Facebook, showing his support, and Helen thinks he finally made a friend. Tom asks to meet him on the roof during school, and once Helen gets there, his friend confesses he is the one behind the watch incident. The explanation is that with Helen being the new target of bullying, Tom can finally live his school life in peace. Helen gets a bit mad and a fight starts. Tom slips from the edge of the roof and even though Helen tries to grab his hand, he doesn't have enough strength to pull him up. Tom says that he's sorry and he falls. That night, to suffocate the guilt he's feeling, Helen convinces himself that Tom got what he deserved, and the others need some punishment too. The night before Halloween, Helen goes into the school dorms and kills all the people that are there, using their blood to paint on the walls. The story ends with his catchphrase. The story is a prequel, set in 1990. Helen is 10 and is a very cheerful kid with many friends. His best friend is Phil. They play together at Helen's house quite often and they both enjoy drawing, even if Phil's drawings are always creepy. On a snowy day, Phil goes to Helen's house and he doesn't want to get his coat off in an attempt to hide bruises. We find out that Phil's dad is a violent alcoholic and his mother just kinda abandoned her kid with him and went on to live a happy life. Nice! One morning, Phil's mom visits him with a bag of gifts. The two chat for a bit, and when she's about to leave again, Phil asks if she can stay a little longer. The mom is like, no man, sorry, like my hubby is waiting in the car, so fuck you, man. So she leaves, and Phil is left sitting in the park wondering what to do. 3 random kids appear out of nowhere and they start to bully him, calling his mom a bitch. A fight starts and one of the kids throws a stone at Phil's head. He dies. The kids panic and they decide to bury the body in the snow. Meanwhile, Helen is just waiting for his friend to show up. He gets very worried and rushes out. He finds the body and the 3 random kids frame him for murder. Helen's ass is saved by a mysterious witness that testified in his favor. Helen's mom wants to go thank this mysterious witness, but Helen wants to stay at home and draw. He decides he's done making friends. The story ends with a plot twist. The witness is none other than Tom. The story starts with 14-year-old Helen being in a mental hospital, with a psychiatrist trying to interview him. Helen recalls the events of the 2013 creepypasta, the bullying, the watch incident, and Tom's death. What happened later is a bit different. Apparently the school had an Halloween party that Helen wanted to attend, and he even made a mask for it. After preparing the mask, he felt tired and napped, waking up at the hospital. He killed 17 people during the party, but he can't remember any of it. In the next interview, the psychiatrist questions his name, and Helen reveals that his parents really wanted a daughter, so when they had a son, they just treated him like a girl until he was sent to school. After 7 years of treatment, Helen, now 21, gets released. Helen and the psychiatrist meet again a couple of times and Helen seems to be living a normal life. A couple of years later though, people start to go missing and the police discover that all the victims were classmates of Helen. His house gets investigated and many corpses, treated like canvases, are found. Along with the corpses, the police finds a letter addressed to Helen's psychiatrist. The letter says like, hey, I remember how I killed all those people. Beware, doc, cause I know how to get to you. See ya. Smiley face. The story ends and it's unknown what happened to the psychiatrist. What's cool about this remake is that Diddlecat made like drawings and photos and fake articles to make the story more realistic. That's actually very nice, good job. Diddlecat also posted several animations and animatics on her YouTube channel starring Bloody Painter. Some of them are Creepypasta Bloody Painter Anime, where Bloody Painter says his catchphrase, Bloody Painter Christmas Animation in the Kitchen, where Bloody Painter is cooking pancakes while singing We Wish You a Merry Christmas, and other creepypasta characters spy on him, and Bloody Painter with the Puppeteer Fragmentary Memories, where Helen and the Puppeteer have a chat. All of these were posted in February of 2016, but I think they're even older and have been reposted. More recent animations are original Bloody Painter Origins animated short film Become a Legendary Character, which is a reading of the 2017 creepypasta along with drawings, posted in October of 2018. I highly suggest watching this one, especially for all the info that Diddlecat gives at the end. And original Bloody Painter original video animation Winter, animated short film, posted in May of 2019, in which Bloody Painter kills a guy. The Puppeteer was created by user Bleeding Heartworks on DeviantArt. His first introduction is this drawing posted in July of 2013. In the description, the author states that the Puppeteer forces his victims to commit suicide, while in his head he's turning them into puppets. A couple of days later, Bleeding Heartworks posted the first Puppeteer creepypasta. The story starts with our protagonist, a college student, foreshadowing that a beautiful porcelain doll she got from her mom will be her death. The protagonist thinks about how lonely her college life was and homework was the only thing distracting her. She took the porcelain doll with her to feel less lonely. She grew progressively more depressed and paranoid to the point where she felt she could no longer leave her room. One night, she goes outside for the first time in a while to get some fresh air and some cigarettes. In front of the stairs, there's a shadowy figure, still and silent. The protagonist is ready to walk past it, but weird crackling and sobbing sounds scare her. The mysterious figure asks her if she's alone. She shakes her head in response and the shadow turns to look at her. The shadow looks like a man with grey skin and a yellow light shining from his eyes and mouth. Terrified, the protagonist runs back into her room, and in a panic she accidentally breaks the porcelain doll. After an hour of complete silence, the girl thinks that her loneliness may have led her to some sort of breakdown, and she tries to calm down. She attempts to fix the doll, but it's pointless. The puppeteer appears again, but this time the protagonist accepts him, under his influence, fearing her loneliness even more after breaking her only friend. The ghost-like entity cuts and uses her arms muscles as puppet strings, like this one scene from A Nightmare on Elm Street. He kills her and takes her with him or something, while for every other person it looks like she committed suicide. In November of 2013, Bleeding Heartworks posted his first reference sheet. In November of 2013, they posted a second puppeteer creepypasta. Our protagonist is a boy who's very lonely. His older brother doesn't really play with him, their mother is trying her best, but their father left them many years ago, so it has been hard. The woman develops a drinking habit. The protagonist can't make friends at school, and so he's always alone. He begins to daydream a lot, imagining many friends. One in particular is the Puppet Man, who came out only at night, bringing with him dolls and puppets. Despite his big collection of imaginary friends, the protagonist knows that the puppeteer is real. Years pass and the boy is now 12. His older brother moved out as he couldn't put up with her mother anymore. The puppeteer keeps visiting him every night and the protagonist is starting to feel scared of him. His mom is much worse now, her drinking problem became more and more severe as time went on. One day she snaps and becomes violent, throwing chairs around and slapping the protagonist. He locks himself into his room and for the first time in years he talks to the puppeteer, desperately needing someone to vent to. He responds by saying, "Hey, I got you. Now go to bed." The kid wakes up in the middle of the night because of a weird cracking noise. He finds the puppeteer in the process of turning his mom into a puppet. He kills her and the protagonist faints. Again, to every other person, it looks like a suicide. During the funeral, the puppeteer appears by his side and holds his hand. Around a week later, there's the first mention of Zachary, one of the puppeteer's Proxies, and Motherly Love becomes a prequel to Zachary's story. In January of 2014, Bleeding Heartworks posted a creepypasta dedicated to Zachary. The story starts with Zachary ruminating about the time his mother was killed by the puppeteer. 4 years have passed since then, and Zach went to live with his aunt. Then, a random day, the puppeteer appears again, killing both his aunt and his uncle. Zach runs away from the house and the voice of the puppeteer taunts him. Then, I'm not sure if it's the ghost trying to gaslight him or if Zach actually murdered his relatives, but he has visions of killing his relatives. The puppeteer tells him he just wants to be friends again, but before Zach can process what's happening, a policeman asks him if everything is alright. The puppeteer encourages Zach to kill him and he does so. The kid tries to outrun the police and takes refuge under a bridge. He's about to slip into the water below, but the puppeteer holds his hand. He asks him if he trusts him, Zachary says yes, and the ghost lets him fall. In January of 2014, there's the first appearance of Emra, proxy and former lover of the puppeteer made by Highwind Valor, Bleeding Heartworks' friend. Highwind Valor created Emra in 2013 and she posted a reference sheet in 2017. I couldn't find a story dedicated to her, but from her reference sheet we find out that Emra was into ballet and theater, where she met Jonathan, the puppeteer when he was human. At some point she has to choose between her career and Jonathan, and she chooses her career, pushed by her parents' high expectations. I assume that the puppeteer kills her and turns her into a puppet so that she could be with him forever. By the way, I found out that apparently the Puppeteer X-Zero ship was particularly popular. Do any of you remember why? Because it's such a random ship to me. In February of 2015, Bleeding Heartworks posted an updated version of the Puppeteer's reference sheet. In December of 2015, they posted the character design for Jonathan. In September of 2016, they posted Zachary's reference sheet, and in October of 2016, the origin story of the puppeteer was finally posted. The story starts by describing Jonathan's passion for musicals and theater. He was the oldest among his siblings, and so he was left with the responsibility to look after them when his parents were working. Jonathan starts high school, he joins a theater club, and he meets Emra. The two grow very close and they start dating. During the last year of school, Emra's parents tell her that if she wants to keep pursuing ballet, she has to break up with Jonathan and focus on her career. Since ballet is her passion and dream, she accepts. Emra doesn't have the courage to break up with Jonathan, so she starts to act colder and more distant until eventually they stop talking. Jonathan falls into depression, he moves into a small apartment and cuts ties with every person he knew. He feels angry, sad, and lonely. He decides to commit suicide by hanging himself, and we know he'll come back, but this is how the story ends. In November of 2016, Bleeding Heartworks revamped the very first Puppeteer creepypasta from 2013. It's pretty much the same plot, but the protagonist is a guy, I think, and instead of a porcelain doll, there's a white box containing encouraging notes. From February to June of 2017, Bleeding Heartworks started to post their comic Desolation. It's about Maxine, a girl that is hunted by the puppeteer after a suicide attempt. The comic isn't over, and I have no idea if it will ever be updated again. Finally, in June of 2017, Bleeding Heartworks posted yet another updated reference sheet for the puppeteer. Sonic Daddy XC was wrote by user JC the Hyena and posted on the Creepypasta Wiki in August of 2011. A year later, user My5T Crimson published a fan game of Sonic Daddy XZ on GameJolt. The game will be updated many times through the years, and currently the most recent version is Sonic Daddy XZ version 7. The game was played by both Markiplier and PewDiePie in 2012 and 2013, making it mainstream popular. In 2017, JC the Hyena posted on his DeviantArt page a remake of Sonic Daddy XZ, and the character was named X. He suffered the same fate as Twitter. From 2021-2022, because of drama we'll discuss later, the new owner of Sonic Daddy XZ is user Astronomicongs on Twitter. The character was lent to her by JC and his ex-girlfriend. Currently, Sonic Daddy XZ is named Xenophanes, and Astronomicongs is no longer active because of many reasons that she listed in a Google Doc. You may not like the new design, but hey, he's canonically a fuckable man now, so I say it's a win. The story starts with our protagonist, Tom, receiving a package from his dear friend Kyle, who he hasn't heard from in 2 weeks. The package contains a CD and a note. The note says like, "Hi Tom, the game is haunted, please burn it or destroy it, I'm probably already dead, so bye." Sadly for Kyle, the CD is labeled Sonic Daddy XZ, and Tom really loves Sonic games, so his dear friend can fuck off. Tom starts the game, and oh my gosh, it's the first Sonic game from 1991, how cool! The title screen turns spooky for a split second, then Tom is shocked that he can play as Robotnik. He chooses Tails, and we're in Green Hill. Tom runs forward for a bit until he sees pixelated animal corpses scattered around. Very spooky. At some point, Tails reaches Sonic, but it's not Sonic, it's Demon Sonic. Demon Sonic asks, "Hello, do you want to play with me?" And the game is hide and seek. Everything is on fire now, and Tom tries to save Tails by running forward. Demon Sonic starts to chase him, and eventually Tails is caught and killed. Tom is absolutely baffled. He then picks Knuckles, and again there's nothing to do other than walking forward. Bloodstains start to appear on the ground, and Demon Sonic appears in front of Knuckles. There's like a boss fight where Tom tries to punch Demon Sonic but he can't, and Knuckles dies. Tom goes to sleep, and he has a nightmare in which Demon Sonic reveals that Kyle was trapped in the game, and because Tom decided to play, Kyle's soul was taken. Tom goes back to play because he's a fucking idiot, and it's Robotnik's turn. He's walking down some pretty long stairs and the screen gets darker. Demon Sonic pops in front of him, and Tom sees an hyper-realistic image of the demon along with his catchphrase, "I am God." He asks, "Ready for round 2, Tom?" And the computer dies. Tom hears a whisper and he turns back, seeing a Sonic the Hedgehog plushie on his bed. That is actually so nice of him, oh my gosh. This story is so unnecessarily long. I generally started to feel physical pain at some point. So, Sonic, X is a cosmic entity now, keep that in mind. The story starts with college student Tom getting a message from his pal Roger about whether or not he heard from Kyle. The answer is no, and it's been 3 weeks. It doesn't make much sense because, they're in the same college. They live in the same dorm, I assume. Can you imagine not checking on your best friend from high school after he's been absent for 3 weeks, when he lives right next to you? The next day, Tom finally goes to Kyle's room, but sadly, no one seems to be there. When he gets back to his room, Tom finds a package in front of the door with a note attached. The note is from Kyle and it's very weird. He explains he found this great game that kept him busy and insists that Tom should absolutely play it too. In the package, Tom finds an unlabeled CD with a barely noticeable X on it and brushes it off thinking it's some sort of prank. He's mad, but then he finally pieces together just how out of character his best friend is acting. Something isn't right. Suddenly, a detective, Derek Green, knocks on his door asking about Kyle. Then he asks Tom to follow him. Kyle is in his room, dead, and it's wild to me that a detective would purposely bring the victim's best friend to watch his corpse on the crime scene. Is this standard protocol? I don't know. Tom is in an interrogation room now because Detective Derek and his sister, Detective Sarah, I guess, need his help. Apparently, what happened to Kyle also happened to many other people, and they all died as if, something big forced its way inside their throats. That doesn't sound right, I'm sorry. Tom is shocked, I get it, but it takes him way too much time to talk about the package and the CD. Wait, no. He doesn't talk about it at all, actually. This is so stupid. Tom recalls this one time where Kyle named a game he wanted to try. Instead of talking about the note and the CD he got moments before Kyle's death. A week passes, and while Tom is chatting with his other friends, he thinks about the laptop he gifted to Kyle and wants to retrieve it before it gets thrown away. He manages to do so, and the laptop seems to be working just fine, even though the screen is a bit cracked. More days pass, and Tom gets curious about the CD that Kyle sent him. He inserts the disc in his own laptop, and the game is called Sonic the Hedgehog. After installing it, a black X icon appears on the desktop. Oh my god, it's actually Twitter. So the game starts and there's a voice speaking, and Tom notices how this voice is trying to sound like Sonic, and it was a nice attempt, but something wasn't right. Tom, you know that Sonic isn't real, right? What do you mean? He has been voiced by many voice actors. This time there's many more Sonic characters in the game. There's Tails, Knuckles, and Eggman, but also Silver, Amy, Shadow, Rouge, and many more. Tom picks Silver, but is forced to play with Tails. The game is 3D now, by the way. The future, the progress. Tails wanders around in an abandoned town until Tom sees in the distance Sonic. It's a weird Sonic though, he's naked, he doesn't have his gloves and shoes. Demon Sonic sees Tails and Tom, he shows his fangs and his eyes become black. Tails dies and Tom is so creeped out that he turns off his laptop by pressing the power button. The next day, he has some of the cringiest dialogue I've ever read with his friends until a student barges in crying and screaming that a teacher is dead. Apparently, she died like Kyle. Everyone is sent to the room and Tom calls the detective. Detective Green is like, alright, so I'm gonna pick you up and then we're gonna go check together. What the fuck do you mean? You can't bring a random student on a crime scene? What are you doing? And then Sarah, the other detective, while accompanying this kid to the crime scene, says, oh, by the way, feel free to participate in the investigation. Usually it's not allowed to get civilians involved, but we don't have any leads, so... But being a friend of a murdered person is not enough to be a lead. Also, he's not participating in the investigation because he has evidence that he's not showing you. So, I calm down, because a new character, a policeman, basically says what I just said. So, the story though tries to portray this guy as some asshole, but he's right. What the fuck is a kid doing here? So they examine the scene, and Derek notices how in every single crime scene there has been a laptop with a cracked screen. Do you think Tom will bring up the CD and Kyle's note now? No, what are you, stupid? Tom even says, do you think the killer's destroying computers because they contained something he didn't want known? Oh, you mean something like the game Possessed by Satan that made you piss your pants? The one that your friend sent to you before dying? Something like that, maybe? Tom goes back into his room, and apparently the guy that was shitting himself over angry polygons is now Mr. Facts and Logic and doesn't even consider the possibility of a link between Satan's game and Kyle's death. After an assembly with the principal, Tom asks his poor friends if they want to watch him play Sonic .exe, and they all meet in a classroom with a projector. Tom is playing as Sally this time, and he's in a long corridor with doors. He reaches a room and finds an unconscious Fiona hanging from the ceiling. Not dead, but like suspended by ropes. Fiona wakes up and begs Sally to let her out. At some point, Tom reaches the abandoned town from his first playthrough, and Demon Sonic appears, staring at him and his friends, while the laptop starts acting up. Demon Sonic shapes into the X design and extends his arm outside of the projection towards Tom and his friends. Everyone panics and Tom manages to shut off the laptop. They get scolded by a teacher for being where they're not supposed to, and while going back to their rooms, one of Tom's friends suggests they might have hallucinated the end. Tom thinks he's definitely in denial, but they don't feel like calling him out on it. Tom, you're the last person that can call others out. I hope you die by the end of this story. The next day, while Tom is in the library researching pointless stuff, 3 more murders are announced. Sadly, they're not Tom's friends. Then the story tries to pass the 21 grams soul theory from the 19th century as real. You know, the one that said, yeah, we do have a soul and it weighs 21 grams because that's the weight we lose when we die, even though it has been deemed as an absolutely flawed experiment. Like, Tom Shapiro here is all about finding a logical explanation for things. He sees with his eyes and with witnesses a demon hand reaching out from a projection. In his head, he calls his friend delusional for suggesting it may have been an hallucination. Then, in his room, he doesn't want to believe in it anymore as it's just not logical. Then, he's ready to buy the fucking 21 gram soul theory from the 19th century, even bothering a detective for it. Cause yes, Tom calls Derek and asks about the autopsies. Spoiler! The theory is fucking real in this story. And then Tom still has the balls to say that he doesn't want to assume that anything supernatural is happening. I'm losing my mind. Tom also asks about a cult he stumbled upon while researching in the library. And Derek reveals that they're called the Cult of X. Do you think Tom will bring up the fucking CD now? No, he didn't give a shit about playing it with his friends, but trying to convince the detective to take a look into it? No. But Tom does piece together that Kyle's note wasn't written by Kyle, but by the cult. That Kyle himself got the game from the cult, somehow, and that the killer is in the game. The next day, while Tom and his friends are trying to find a classmate that just disappeared, they find Demon Sonic instead. He reveals that he's like an alien thing, and that he was very happy when he found humans cause he found many toys to play with. He gets offended when he's called a murderer cause he doesn't murder, he just steals souls and traps them in video games. Tom and his friends run away and X chases them. They reach an intercom and order everyone to evacuate because there's a killer on the loose inside the school. People try to leave, but every entrance has been barricaded from outside. There's no phone signal either, it's the cult's doing. A couple of Tom's friends have their souls stolen, very sad. Tom and his last friend hide in the food storage, don't ask me why Demon Sonic can't reach them there, and they sleep through the night. The next morning, Detective Green calls and he's like, "Oh my god, Tom, I tried calling you so many times, but like the Wi-Fi was down." But like, you can still receive and make calls even if the Wi-Fi is down. I mean, earlier the author wrote there's no signal, so maybe he meant there's no signal and there's no Wi-Fi. Turns out, Demon Sonic could in fact reach them and Tom's last friend was killed during the night. Tom runs into his room and smashes his laptop. convinced that it's Demon Sonic's only way into the human world. He then remembers Kyle's laptop, but before he can destroy it, he hears Kyle's voice coming from it. Kyle's soul was placed into Knuckles. The two have a moment, but X interrupts it. Tom threatens to kill himself with a knife, and this really gets to X, cause he's his favorite toy. So I guess X can't take the soul of a person he didn't murder? Tom kills himself? Wow, I did not expect that. But Demon Sonic still manages to steal his soul, so too bad. Sometime later, Detective Derek is at a bar, busy being sad, and his sister arrives with evidence. A note found in Tom's trash, signed Kyle. I'm going to cry. It's over. Moving on. So, the drama. To start easy, JC the Hyena was very cringe. On the Sonic.exe wiki page, I found a comment with his response to the removal of the story from the official Creepypasta wiki in 2014, and I just have to read it. I deeply regret to inform you all that I received some bad news. The admins of the Creepypasta wiki have finally decided to delete Sonic.exe off of the wiki, on the grounds that it was badly written and had too many cliches, and was a bad example of what should be a creepypasta. Bull frigging horseshit! As you can see, I am furious with the fact that my masterpiece, which has won the hearts of millions and has made a massive impact on the internet, is being brought down by a bunch of jealous, arrogant, R-worded furry haters. But that does not mean I am just going to sit down and take this lightly. Nope. They have been messing with the ball, and now they've called out the horns. Listen everyone, I need your help with this. We are at war here. I want every Sonic.exe fan who is reading this to get the word out. I want you to tell every other Sonic.exe fan out there, every fanatic, every artist, every follower of my creation about this. Tell your friends who are also Sonic.exe fans if they have to. Tell them we have to keep the spirit of Sonic.exe alive. Make more fan art, make more videos, block the haters, praise Sonic.exe like you never have before, build websites dedicated to his greatness. Whatever you gotta do to keep him alive and strong, just do it! The deletion of Sonic.exe from the wiki is but a minor cut on our flower of greatness, my friends. And that cut has done nothing but further the spreading, and we are the pollen of this flower. We need to prepare for our victory over the haters. The haters need to bleed for their crimes. Rejoice, my fellow Sonic.exe fans. Our glorious little hellspawn shall have the laugh yet. This will be his ultimate victory. The absolute subjugation of the internet itself. Moving on to the serious stuff, a couple of years ago JC the Hyena was cancelled for being inappropriate with minors. He sent not safe for work art to a minor and had sexual inappropriate conversations with another one. Luigi Kid made 2 videos about this as JC's ex-girlfriend reached out to him. The situation is very cringe, honestly. What I can say is stay on Discord as little as possible. Go outside, watch the sunsets and the stars at night. Ponder about who you are, about your place into the world. Don't roleplay weird fetish stuff with possible minors. JC does mention a difficult home life, but none of that explains roleplaying porn with a minor. Like stress-induced weakness? Have a tea, man, you are 26. Also, this is the funniest way ever to convince someone you're not a pedophile. There's also an apology on his Free Affinity account, signed Sir JC the Hyena. Yeah, right, buddy. There are so many .exe fangames dedicated to this hedgehog and his pals, some meant to be taken seriously, some made entirely for fun. There's Sonic.exe, Pingas.exe, Sally.exe, Hedgehog.exe, Round2.exe, Sonic Old.exe, Rouge.exe, Sonic.exe or Nightmare Beginning, Sally.exe Continued Nightmare, Silver.exe, Knuckles.exe, Sonic2.exe, Sonic3.exe, Sonic4.exe, An Ordinary Battle Amongst Familiar Hills, Ordinary Sonic, Anti-Sonic.exe, Sonic3D.exe, Big the Cat.exe, Shadow.exe, Sonic.exe the Game, I Want to Die.exe, and Chaos.exe. Not to mention all the .exe games dedicated to Tails and Tails Doll, but we'll talk about them later. The .exe epidemic is Sonic.exe's biggest sin. The Tails doll is an unlockable character from the game Sonic R. Due to its creepy appearance, it was turned into a horror character by fan animations and creepypastas. One of the most famous Tails doll animation comes from the Sonic Shorts Volume 2, published by Sonic Paradox in 2008. Another famous animation is Tails Doll movie trailer made by Lord Kiyo and published in 2012, where many Tails dolls take over the world. Tails Doll's most famous quote, "Can you feel the sunshine?" comes from the song Can You Feel the Sunshine, which is its theme in the Sonic R game. It's weird though, cause the song is very upbeat and cheerful. On the Urban Legends online website, I found a page dated February of 2012 that lists some of the Tails doll creepypastas. The Tails doll Curse, wrote by Rebecca G, is the most famous one. The story is about a dad gifting a copy of Sonic R to his son. The night after the kid completes the game, the doll comes to life and whispers, "You're coming with me forever," to the dad. That's it. The following creepypastas all contain instructions on how to summon the Tails doll. I remember watching this video from 2009 that was also about summoning the Tails doll. I don't know if I ever actually tried to, but I'm still here, so... Among the endless sea of .exe games that exist, there are many dedicated to this character. There's Tails Doll.exe, Feel the Sunshine Knuckles, and Reform.exe, made by Insane Pinkie Pie. There's Sunshine.exe and Insanity.exe, made by NovaWare on Game Jolt, and there's Sonic Fear Tails Doll The Murderer, made by YesMan10. The game got a remake in 2020 by Vertedero G. Macero. All these games were made around 2013, maybe earlier. Insane Pinkie Pie was a very prolific developer of .exe horror games. Does anyone know what happened to them? Their Game Jolt page isn't up anymore.
I can feel the cold hand of death and the end drawing near. I've seen thoughts of the man.
Pokemon Lost Silver was posted on 4chan by an anonymous user in June of 2010. The creepypasta is about a hunted cartridge of Pokemon Silver. From July of 2010, user Reed Maxwell on YouTube started to work on a dedicated fangame, and in September of 2010 he released the first version of Pokemon Lost Silver, a one-to-one recreation of the original creepypasta. You play as Gold, even though in the game he's called ... and you start in Sprout Tower. Your team is made of 5 unknown that spell the word leave and a Cyndaquil that knows Flash named Hurry. In the next room it's pitch black and using Flash reveals a red room with only a long corridor going south. The screen becomes progressively darker until you reach a sign. Answering yes kills Hurry and the screen remains black until you check your Pokemons. There's 6 unknown now, spelling the words "he died." You find yourself trapped and surrounded by tombs until the escape rope animation starts. Gold's sprite is now completely white and upon checking his card he's missing his limbs and crying blood. The team is now made of 5 unknown that spell the word dying and a Celebi that is missing half its sprite. Walking north you meet random NPCs, interacting with them does nothing, and at the end you find Red. A battle starts and Red sends a very depressed Pikachu. The battle continues by itself and at the end both Celebi and Pikachu die, and there's also a decapitated Red. Gold is teleported into his bedroom, his sprite is transparent, and he doesn't have his walking animations. When checking his card, he's a floating head. The team is made of 6 unknown, spelling the words "no more." You exit the house and continue until you reach another Gold, I think. Gold is back in the Tombs room and he's invisible. He's no longer on his card, and the gym leaders are replaced by skulls. 6 unknown spell the words "I'm dead." The game ends telling you "rest in peace." ... Sometime later, Reed published a newer version which contained an alternative route called Hidden, based on notes that the author of the story apparently left him. To play hidden, you have to respond no 5 times to the turn back now sign. Gold sprites are now switched and you have to go through the corridor again. This time it's Gold sprite that turns progressively darker instead of the room. The team is made of 6 unknown with red eyes that spell the words too bad. The next room is a short maze, the unknown now spell relieve. When exiting the maze, Gold's eyes disappear both from his in-game sprite and from the one in his card. The eyes of the gym leaders disappear too. The team is now made of 4 X-shaped unknown, a Typhlosion with no eyes named Please and an egg. Walking like 10 steps causes the death of Please and the unknown now spelled deny. You're now in, I think, Mount Silver and an unnamed Cyndaquil that knows Flash appears in the team. On South Side, you have a battle with Silver and his Feraligatr. I have no idea how to say Pokemon's names. When selecting the fight option, the bag opens and you have to use an unnamed item to put the enemy to sleep. You win the fight and both Silver and his Pokemon disappear. Gold flies to Golden Road City. Here there are NPCs scattered around and upon interacting with them an unknown appears. Once you interact with every NPC, you fly to a magenta version of Golden Road City, where all the NPCs are lined up and the aforementioned unknown now spell "Who are you, kid?" Gold reaches the outside of the Sprout Tower and is sent back to the normal route. This time though, the game ends with "Rest in peace, Pokemon Trainer Gold." From December of 2020, Reed started to work on a remake of his fangame called Red Lost Silver, and its most up-to-date version was released in November of 2022. Other than a graphical update, it added 2 more alternative routes, again based on the original author's notes, called Ruins and Ashes. To play Ruins, you have to switch the unknown that spell He Died into Died He, when you're trapped in a tombs room after her dies. Gold gets teleported into a spiral of tombs in his missing limbs form. His turning sprites are missing and there's only 1 Pokemon in the team, a Houndoom called Forever that only knows Flash. Gold falls into a hole and is now at the ruins of Alph. You can enter a house and talk to a researcher that teleports you inside the ruins. Here you find an unnamed item. Now you have to re-enter the ruins and solve some puzzles. I never really played Pokemon Silver, so I don't know if these are the actual puzzles or if they are recreations, but for every puzzle solved, you meet an unknown and Forever learns a new move. After one of the puzzles, a dialog box that says "Hurry, receive Totodile" pops up and a Totodile appears in your team. Once you solve the last puzzle, you're back in the Sprout Tower and a sage gives you an hidden machine. I think it's supposed to be the Flash hidden machine. Silver barges in to fight you and you absolutely obliterate him. And you're back into the normal route. To play Ashes, you have to press A on the pillar in the red room with all the NPCs lined up. You get teleported somewhere else and you have a long walk. Your team is made of a Celebi, an egg and a Typhlosion. At some point the landscape gets a bit fucked up and at the end of this marathon, a Celebi teleports you to Golden Road City. All the NPCs are lined up and are asking you to make them proud. You reach the roof of Sprout Tower and Ho-Ho kicks your ass. The team is now made of 6 unknown that spell the word burnt and a half Celebi called away. And you're back into the normal route. No, don't ask, I have no idea what any of this means. So even though the protagonist is Gold or ... the fandom calls him Lost Silver for the sake of clarity. BRVR, or Brr, was created by user Starbite on DeviantArt. They made 2 creepypastas called Pokemon Dead Channel and Pokemon Dead Channel 2, posted in 2010 and 2011, and are about a haunted copy of Pokemon Channel for the GameCube. The story starts with our protagonist remembering the time she got a GameCube and played her first video games. One of these games was Pokemon Channel. While naming her first Pikachu, she chose the nick BRVR, which was supposed to be a shortened version of Brother. Since the protagonist didn't have any friends at the time, she became kind of obsessed with the game, and Brother became her best friend. As the protagonist starts to grow older, she changes school, she finally makes a real friend and finds new hobbies, and so Pokemon Channel gets abandoned. A couple of years pass and sadly the protagonist has to move again, and is forced to say goodbye to her bestie. The protagonist goes back to play games and eventually she stops leaving the house. She decides to play Pokemon Channel again, Brother looks very mad and the room's decor becomes creepy. The Pikachu asks, Brother wants to know if you still love him. The protagonist picks the yes option, but the Pokemon responds with, Brother knows when you're lying. Brother forces the protagonist to go outside and the sky is red and there's corpses of Pokemon scattered around. The Viridian Forest is on fire and with more dead Pokemons. The ocean is made of blood and Brother fishes a very spooky Magikarp. More gory descriptions follow, then they reach Mount Snowfall and Brother takes the protagonist into the ruins, where many sad messages are written on the walls. Brother directly confronts the protagonist about having been abandoned, he threatens her, and a Pikachu doll appears on her desk. Did you notice some similarities with the Sonic.exe first creepypasta? Yeah, well, this one came first, so... Here we follow the point of view of the mom of the protagonist of the previous story, I think. She goes to check on her daughter, who has been in a room for hours, but she's not there anymore. The mom gets a bit worried, but she thinks her daughter could have gone outside without her noticing. The woman decides to play whatever her daughter was playing to see what was keeping her so busy. After some gory/creepy descriptions, Brother asks if she wants to play with him, and the mom picks the yes option. The Pikachu leads her outside, the Pokemon corpses are still there and more gory stuff happens, like Brother playing fetch with an eyeball. Eventually Brother asks, do you know what's happening to me? And the mom responds like, nah. This makes the Pokemon very sad. Brother takes the woman into the ruins on Mount Snowfall and he asks, redemption? The mom picks the yes option, but the response is, there's no redemption. The story ends with the daughter standing in the doorway asking the mom what she's doing in her room. The mom sends her in her own bedroom because she wants to ask her stuff, but sees an eye in the mirror. Ben Drowned was created by user Jedusable. I won't go into details this time because Ben Drowned isn't just a creepypasta, it's a full-on AARG divided in 3 arcs. The one you're probably most familiar with is the first one, known as The Haunted Cartridge, posted on 4chan back in 2010. The Haunted Cartridge follows the college student Jedusable as he deals with a Majora's Mask's copy hunted by the entity Ben. Ben manages to spread to Jedusable's computer and starts to follow him in the real world too. Fun fact, I remember all the "oh my god, Ben is on Cleverbot" videos that spawned when the story got mainstream popular. But I completely forgot that Cleverbot was used in the original story too. That is very funny to me. At some point, Jedusable instructs his roommate to upload a video and a TXT file containing the truth. But the big plot twist is that Jedusable doesn't have a roommate at all, so it was Ben all along. The story introduces Ben's catchphrases, "you shouldn't have done that," and "you've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?" The next arcs of the ARG are called Moon Children and Awakening. But puking, isn't Ben just a kid that was drowned by his dad? I highly suggest you go watch Nexpo's and especially Sakro's videos. If you prefer reading, there's the Jedusable wiki, but it's a pretty confusing reading, as ARG tend to be. Personally, my favorite part remains the first one. The gameplay videos along with the story really won me back then. Ben Drowned has several dedicated .exe fan games like Remember.exe, Lost Memory.exe, and Link.exe, all made by the same developer, user SamKM. These were quite the controversial, spooky little games, not so much for their content, but for what they could supposedly do. According to this Reddit post from 9 years ago, Remember.exe could take your PC username and call you that, even though that's standard protocol for creepy games at this point. It could shut off your computer, turn on your webcam and take a picture, grab your email and send emails to you, and it would continue to run after being closed, preventing you from opening the task manager and playing sounds once in a while. A user said that every time he would type remember, a giggle would play. What the fuck? The developer himself responded to this Reddit thread by saying, Just to clarify, none of the files will do any damage to your computer. The worst thing remember.exe can do is to shut down your computer. It does not delete any files, stop the task manager from being opened, or collect any data from the user. Link and lost memory can do more, but only if I tell them to. They both connect to me remotely and allow me to send them commands. Wait, what? I also found a Reddit post from 8 years ago made by Mudahar from Some Ordinary Gamers linking remember.exe and lostmemory.exe. To a comment asking, weren't these the ones that were just viruses? User Broken Link responds, sorta kinda. They were basically backdoors that allow the developer to do things like scan your hard drive, activate your webcam, and other stuff. He would then personalize the game to call you by different user accounts that were saved in your cookies, or take pictures of you with your webcam, and Photoshop a figure standing behind you, then send it to an email address he would find in your cookies as well. Impressive. And weird. At the same time. I don't know if Mudahar made a video about this, I couldn't find it. There are also ban.exe, ban2.exe, ban3.exe, ban4.exe, ban5.exe, and guess what? ban6.exe. All made by user Nati Games, though their Game Jolt page is no longer up. They are a bit spooky in the sense that they do act like viruses. They're very charming though, and I think they were all made in like 2015. There's also Hunted Majora's Mask cartridge made by someone in 2013, and it's not very good. Then we have Alone.exe made by Sanecraft Studios in 2015, and it's peculiar. And finally there's Past.exe made I think in 2016 by Randy Becker on Game Jolt. The game is fine. Herobrine was created by an anonymous user in 2010 and was made popular by the streamer Copeland. Apparently, he read the creepypasta and decided to Photoshop Herobrine in some screenshots of his Minecraft world, that he then showed to his fans. Then he made a stream in which he apparently encountered the Herobrine, and a year later he admitted that it was just a retextured painting. Copeland would also post a link to this weird page. The original stream is lost media, even though some screenshots have been found. On YouTube, there's a recreation of the stream made by Underboss25 under Copeland's guidance. Notch stated on Twitter that Herobrine is not real nor in the game, but Mojang decided to play along by adding "Remove the Herobrine" in the patch notes of some of the game's versions, as an Easter egg. The story narrates the sighting of the mysterious Herobrine entity. The protagonist just spawned a new Minecraft world and everything seems normal. At some point, he sees a figure in the fog, and upon investigating, he finds a human mob with a basic Steve skin, but with white eyes. The mob runs into the fog, disappearing. For the rest of his gaming session, the protagonist keeps seeing weird things like small tunnels and sand pyramids. The protagonist writes a post on a forum asking if others have seen this weird player, but the post gets deleted. He also receives a message from user Herobrine that only says "stop." Another user contacts the protagonist by email telling him that many other people have seen that weird man. The group investigates and discovers that Herobrine is a nick used by a Swedish player, Notch's brother. The protagonist emails Notch and he responds that he used to have a brother, but he died. At the end, there's a screenshot of Herobrine that the protagonist managed to take during the sighting. Once the character reached the mainstream popularity, many mods began to surface, and along with them, many people made videos summoning Herobrine while pretending to be Minecraft Vanilla. While I was researching, because the script for this video is taking me forever, I stumbled upon this pretty recent video from the Mr. Epic that traces Herobrine's origins further back in time. So go watch it. You probably already did, but... Short honorable mention for the theater, because I love this creepypasta! The theater was wrote by an anonymous user on 4chan in 2010, and it's about a weird old and extremely rare computer game from 1993. The game is described as kinda broken, very hard to install, and lacking the structure you would expect from a legit game. Its main star is the ticket taker, a tall, pale man with red lips. Every time you walk past him, he says, "Thank you, please enjoy the movie," with abysmal audio quality. The gameplay is a loop of you giving your ticket, walking through a dark hallway, the screen fading to black, and you starting again. Did I rhyme? When repeating this loop, weird things can randomly happen. The ticket taker will disappear from his spot, but his dialogue will still play. Upon walking through the hallway, the screen won't fade out, and at some point, the ticket taker will appear in front of you, with a swirled face. A scream will play, and you'll be back at the starting point. The swirly man got named Swirly Headman. After meeting the Swirly Headman, you'll see the ticket taker pacing back and forth with no animations, with his eyes and mouth wide open. He'll say something, yet again with abysmal audio quality, and the dialogue box will show illegible characters. It's widely agreed that he says, "Never reach the other levels." You'll be back at the starting point, the ticket taker will be absent, and the hallway will be blocked by a brick wall. Touching it will cause a game crash. Everything else about the game and its content is an absolute mystery. The story ends on a cringe note by saying that the people that played it claim to occasionally see a glimpse of the swirly headman out of the corner of their eyes. There's also a second creepypasta called The True Story of the Theater, wrote by user Chesu in a comment from 2010 under the original creepypasta on creepypasta.com. The story expands on the game a little bit, it invents a company name and suggests that the theater might have been a learning software. The author recalls some other characters like a popcorn lady and some other rooms that make the game crash. This follow-up is fine for me, it doesn't ruin the mystery by over-inventing stuff. On the contrary, it kinda made me wish that the game was real, cause I wanna try it, goddamn. In a comment from 2016 on the Creepypasta wiki, Chesu states that the game does not exist, and that his old follow-up was also a work of fiction. They also didn't expect that others would post their comment as a separate creepypasta. The story has a couple of fan games. The first one comes from the Italian Creepypasta forum. In a post from September of 2012, user Pochirado explains that when he was 6, his uncle gifted him the disc of a weird PC game. Because of how weird it was, he got bored pretty quickly. Years later, upon reading the theater creepypasta, he noticed that it was identical to that weird game. He posted a couple of gameplays, 2 photos that can't be seen anymore, and a working copy of the game. Pochirado kept pretending that his story was legit, but eventually, through some investigation, it was discovered that the game was made with Game Maker. So, definitely not in 1993, and Pochirado disappeared from the thread. The game is a pretty faithful adaptation of the original creepypasta, but with some creative liberties. Apparently the game can open the disc holder, there's an entirely new room with a screen and a movie that plays. Also there are demon rabbits. Markiplier played it, so... The other fan game got a bit more popular on YouTube during 2013 and it was made by user John Smith. It kinda follows the original creepypasta, but let's just say that for me it doesn't quite reach the same level of creepiness of the previous one. I'm unsure about the origin of this picture of the menu. I think it's been around since 2010, as in the earliest revisions of the creepypasta on the Creepypasta wiki. There's a file called Z the Theater that is now deleted, and on the Creepypasta Land wiki there's the image of the menu and it has the same name, so... The menu is also a bit different from what is described in the creepypasta. Cupcakes, starring Crazy Pinkie Pie, originated from 4chan in January of 2011 and was wrote by user Sergeant Sprinkles. One of the oldest reposts can be found on Equestria Daily. The story is infamous for being the most gory and brutal among early My Little Pony fanfictions. Her most known appearance in fanarts comes from the episode Party of One, aired on April of 2011, in which Pinkie Pie goes insane because her friends are hiding something from her. Spoiler, it's a surprise party for her birthday, and she's under the impression that they hate her. Her hair becomes straight out of sadness, and she makes this face. Pinkie Pie has serious attachment issues, alright? The name Pinkamena Diane Pie is just Pinkie Pie's canonical full name that the Creepypasta fandom adopted to distinguish the characters more clearly. Her full name was revealed in the episode The Cutie Mark Chronicles that aired like a week or so before Party of One.
Pickamina Diane Pie, is that you?
The story starts with Rainbow Dash flying to Pinkie Pie's house to meet her. Upon reaching the place, Pinkie reveals that they're going to bake some cupcakes. Rainbow Dash is disappointed but plays along. Pinkie gives her a cupcake she made just for her, but turns out it was spiked and Rainbow Dash faints. When she wakes up, she's tied to some sort of metal frame, and Pinkie reveals that she intends to kill her and to use her body to make other special cupcakes. Rainbow Dash takes a look at the room she's in, and it's decorated as to host a party. There's painted skulls, organ balloons, chairs made of bones and skin. Wait a second. There are the heads of dead ponies wearing party hats and a banner made of skin with the phrase "Life is a party, wrote with blood." Pinkie is wearing her party attire that consists of a patchwork of cutie marks, 3 sets of wings, and a necklace of horns. The pink pony then proceeds to cut and remove Rainbow Dash's cutie marks, and she saws her wings off. I'm saving you from all the gore descriptions, cause the creepypastas that are mostly shock value and gore are the hardest to summarize, cause it's just gory scene after gory scene. After some more torturing, Pinkie takes Dash's organs out while delighting us with a combo of organ puns. Rainbow Dash dies, and Pinkie has the brilliant idea of trying to turn her into a stuffed plushie. The story ends with a plot twist as we discover that this other pony, Apple Bloom, no idea who that is, was helping Pinkie out. The creepypasta has many popular animated adaptations, the oldest one from October of 2011 by Ocarina Peleia, and it's the most faithful one. When I was rewatching it, I kept thinking, wait, I know this song. And then the credits roll, and yes, it's from Samurai Jack, the episode with the sirens, where Jack loses his memory and the Scotsman has to save his ass. Then there's Cupcakes HD from January of 2012, made by Mr. Davey, the same guy that made Smile HD, and who disappeared. I have no idea what happened to him. Maybe he was sued, I don't know. Apparently he was working on a 15 minutes long Rainbow Factory animation. I'm so mad. We were robbed. Cupcakes HD is gory and also very silly and over the top. And finally, there's the one made by 2K Salo in December of 2012. For some reason, I remember it being older. But this one is more of a prequel. It narrates all the murders Pinkamena made before Rainbow Dash. Pinkamena also has many Daddy-XC games dedicated. There's Smile Daddy-XC made by Keiki on Game Jolt in 2014. There are Dreamy Rainbow Daddy-XC, Dreamy Rainbow Daddy-XC 2, and Dreamy Rainbow Daddy-XC 3, all made by someone around 2014, maybe earlier. There's Bent Daddy-XC made by Hope Abandoner in maybe 2014. There are Pinkie Pie's Adventure, Pinkie Pie's Adventures 2, and Pinkie Pie's Adventure 3 made by Insane Pinkie Pie, probably in 2014. Pinkamena is also the main antagonist, I think, of the Luna game series in the form of jump scares. About the Luna game series, I found a Reddit post from 2021 by the original author where they linked a website that provides insight and many infos about the development of these games. You can also download all of them. The Rainbow Factory creepypasta was written by user Aurora Dawn and firstly published in August of 2011. From December of 2012 to February of 2013, he wrote Pegasus Device, a sequel to Rainbow Factory that I won't summarize because it's too long. And in February of 2021, he published an edited version of the original Rainbow Factory. All of these stories can be found on his fanfiction page. The story starts by establishing that no one really knows how rainbows are made in Equestria. Inside the water factory, liquid colors called spectra are processed and turned into like powders that the Pegasi release in the air to create rainbows. But no one knows where the spectra comes from. Also, the workers of the factory can't leave the facility, and those who do are too disturbed to be able to talk about what happens in there. Our protagonist is Scootaloo, a Pegasus that's about to take her final flight test. While she's waiting for her turn, along with her friend Orion, another pony, Aurora Dawn fails the test and breaks her wings. and no one helps her. That's so sad. The Pegasi in this story are mean. Those who fail the test are like ostracized by the community and exiled. Exiled from Cloudsdale, by the way, the Pegasi town. Orion has this virtuous momentum where he starts his test but then flies to help Aurora instead. Scutalo fails too because she gets distracted by what just happened to her friend. Then they all wait to see where they'll be taken. They're escorted to the Rainbow facility and greeted by the engineer Dr. Atmosphere, who leads them in a weird room. Here there are other ponies from other flight schools who also failed their test. Some high-rank ponies enter the room, and one of them, a spoiler, it's Rainbow Dash. She explains that Spectra was once created artificially by powerful unicorns, but at some point they discovered a way to extract natural spectra via machines. Spectra is a fancy word for color, so they basically found a way to suck the color out of things. Scutalo is shocked at the reveal that Rainbow Dash could be this evil, while she continues her explanation. Spectra can be extracted by machines only from living ponies. Rainbow Dash notices Scutalo and they have a moment. It doesn't go very well. And out of spite, Rainbow Dash orders to start with Orion. The machine sucks off Orion. Sorry. So Scutalo leads a riot by shouting the commands of her own flight test. Scutalo manages to open a breach in the wall while Rainbow Dash is busy killing the other ponies, but Aurora can't follow her because her wings still aren't working properly. After a chase scene, Scutalo enters a vent, hoping it will lead her outside. Instead, it leads her back into the room with the Spectral machine. It's implied that she gets killed, but the story ends before we know for sure. The story itself was inspired by Wooden Toaster's song Rainbow Factory, published some days before the story. The song was submitted for a Toastbeard or Pony Music Compo contest with the theme The Beginning of a Rainbow. In January of 2012, user Brownie Dance Party made a music video for the song, and in May of 2013, The Living Tombstone posted a remix version. Personally, I was obsessed with the SFM version from January of 2013, made by Esric91, even though I don't know why there's Fluttershy sitting at the desk. Also, I forgot to mention it before, but both Pinkamena and this Rainbow Dash have plenty of fan arts of their humanized versions. So, if you were like me back in 2014, the only thing you know of Little Miss Rarity is probably this animation. And if you were like me, you were probably very confused about what the fuck was happening. So, Little Miss Rarity was created in 2011 by Love to Nick, and the story starts from a dedicated Tumblr blog. In this universe, Pinkamena is murdering ponies left and right, and Rarity went insane after a scuffle with her pet. In the first post, we see Rarity having scratches all over her face because of a fight with her cat Opalescence, and then she threatens Pinkamena. She's actually kind of obsessed with Pinkamena because this Rarity is a weirdo. Her thing is that she takes pleasure in experiencing pain, but like being stabbed or killed kind of pain. So Rarity makes a Pinkamena doll out of her cat, and she also puts the cat's heart in there. At some point, she is about to torture Sweetie Belle when Twilight comes along to check on Rarity, and to not be caught, Rarity throws her sewing machine at her. Twilight is still alive though. The heart-shaped injury that Rarity has on her chest is self-inflicted and then made prettier, I guess, with hot irons. Twilight definitely has some serious head trauma, but she forgives Rarity. At some point, Rarity notices that the scratches are indeed not healing and they start to bleed profusely. Sweetie Belle wraps Rarity in bandages, but she can't breathe. Sweetie doesn't understand what's wrong and she's off to call Twilight. Rarity gets saved. At some point, Rarity is imprisoned, I don't know why, and the Pinkamena doll possessed by her cat comes out of her stomach to help. The Pinkamena doll kills a guard and frees Rarity, taking her back home. Rarity's left eye becomes black, and a letter that says, "Cat got my tongue, I'll borrow yours," is left under her door. Rarity goes to the herbalist Zecora, I don't know, looking for answers, but according to the zebra, her eye is black because of Opalescence's ghost possessing her. Randomly, Rarity's eyes turn into buttons, she can't see anymore, and a mysterious pony helps her. Apparently it was Stormbreaker, I know nothing of My Little Pony's lore. While wandering around her house, Rarity slips and beats her head on her bathtub. When she wakes up, she is Pinkamina's prisoner and her chest is, open. Apparently, Rarity can't die, no matter what, probably because of the ghost possession. I start to get lost here, bear with me. Opalescence comes out of her chest again and Rarity has some sort of vision of when things were normal. Rarity doesn't want to go back to that world, so she kills Opalescence again, then she imprisons Applejack and then somehow convinces Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie to work for her. So, now there are demons involved. Twilight summons Malice so that he can kill his son, who I assume is this thing here. Twilight makes a pact with Malice, she has to give him her body and soul, and in exchange he'll kill his son and then create a new world based on Rarity's memories and thoughts. So, then the animation is posted. I'm still unsure about what's up with the horn, but everything else is a recap of what happened to Rarity until now. Rarity is revived, Sweetie Belle recaps what happened. She found Rarity in her bed after she had beaten her head in the bathtub. The pony that previously arrested her was there, and Sweetie pushed him down the stairs because she thought he would take Rarity away from her again. Pinkamena is now Pinkie Pie's other personality, I think. So, now there's tendrils that turn you evil if you go outside. Fluttershy eats her pets to survive, Rainbow Dash has been possessed too, and Applejack takes her to the farm to save her. Twilight, now Malice's prisoner, is upset that this new world sucks, and the demon explains that it sucks because Rarity sucks. Malice remembers when Twilight found a weird black book with tarot cards hidden inside. Princess Celestia forbade her from touching the cards, but Twilight disobeyed. She drew multiple cards and each one resulted in a wicked act from her friends. So the goal now is to stop the evilness from spreading, and Pinkie Pie, Rainbow Dash, Rarity and Applejack team up. Meanwhile, a certain ace guy who looks like a magician visits Twilight. Twilight discovers that the symbol that was on the mysterious letter sent to Rarity means unicorn, and while she's busy, Ace steals Malice's deck of tarots. While Twilight is chasing him, she meets the other girls. It's revealed that the unicorn is Trixie. I don't know if I should feel something, but the cast is finally reunited until the Pinkamena doll reveals that the source of corruption is at the river. Twilight goes by herself, always with Malice in her head, and Applejack goes with Rainbow Dash. Applejack knows that Twilight summoned Malice, so she's pretty pissed. So, again, I'm completely lost because this way of writing dialogue is confusing as fuck. I have no fucking clue what's happening, but Trixie summons another demon, Applejack retrieves the tarot cards and throws them at Rarity. Rarity, who's the alpha sinner, which means that she's the first sinner in this world, has the ability to choose the destiny of her and her friends by throwing 3 cards. So apparently Trixie's plan was to go back in time and become the alpha herself. Rarity draws the cards but nothing happens. Malice uses the fear that Twilight and everyone else is feeling to take over. A sheep plushie thing that was a recurrent gag blows up and kills the demon. Nothing relevant happens for a while. Apple Bloom gets Herobrine. Apparently her and Applejack were studying interdimensional travels and Apple Bloom's soul got detached from her body. Meanwhile, we find out that Lady Zebra, I forgot her name, wants Malice's sister book. Malice's sister is called Lucidia and she's like the goddess of love. Also, Malice and Lucidia aren't exactly siblings, they're just created by the same entity. Apple Bloom appears into Rarity's house and shows her a memory in which she's killed by Trixie, I guess. I definitely stopped following the plot at this point. I think Applejack mistakenly put an evil spirit in the body of Apple Bloom in an attempt to retrieve her original soul, but then they do find Apple Bloom's body, so... Then Applejack becomes a Virtuous, which is like a Lucidia's follower. Applejack shoots Twilight, but she doesn't die because there's still Malice inside of her. Malice is doing something, like he's stealing Twilight's body to go see Lucidia, but wasn't her body already his because of the pact? Applejack gets Applebloom's soul and tries to swap it with evil Applebloom, but things don't go as planned. Sweetie Belle, who was trapped by evil Applebloom, becomes corrupted by the tendrils and she kills Applebloom. So, Malice still wants to see Lucidia, they were lovers, but the thing is that if they meet, like, if they're together in the same universe, that universe will be destroyed. I don't really understand why, I get distracted easily, but this meeting in particular will destroy every universe, so no good. So Twilight, who's in Malice's brain, erases all of his memories of Lucidia to try and prevent her summoning. Lucidia gets summoned by the Zebra Lady, so that was pointless, but the universes don't get destroyed, so I guess it did work. We're done. Are you still here? Congrats. The latest update is from 2022, and the last thing we'll see is Fluttershy like this. In a comment from 4 months ago, Love to Nick mentions that they're working on a remake of the Little Miss Rarity animation. The daddy of the lost episode genre. I won't go into too much detail as I'm sure there's already plenty of videos on the subject. Suicide Mouse was wrote by an anonymous user on 4chan back in October of 2009. Thanks to the email linked to that user, we now know that the creator is probably Alexander Kulafi. I have no idea if he ever made a statement or something about this, but the story is, reading it now, it's pretty silly, but the story is about a weird, unreleased Mickey Mouse cartoon from the 30s. According to the protagonist, it's a loop lasting a couple of minutes of a very depressed Mickey walking on a street with some buildings in the background. Then, their source, the assistant of an executive at Disney, emailed them revealing that the cartoon is much longer than they thought. Things get creepier, the street distorts into impossible directions, Mickey's eyes start to fall off, he starts to grin, and random colors appear. When the cartoon ended, the employee who was reviewing the footage left the room, said, "I cannot see what has been unseen" 7 times, and then he shot himself. I cannot see what has been... What the fuck is that supposed to mean? The story ends with the assistant saying to the protagonist that he doesn't know for sure if the cartoon can be found online, but according to rumors, it's there, under the name suicidemouse.av. People immediately got busy trying to recreate the story in video form. User JJacob666 was the first. His version was uploaded on YouTube only a few days after the creepypasta was published. The video was deleted and re-uploaded by different channels many times. Currently you can watch it on the channel Suicide Mouse AV. This adaptation is iconic for sure, but not very good. For all the other versions, I recommend this video from PicPicGamer. It is believed that the inspiration for the creepypasta comes from a series of strips from the 30s where Mr. Slicker conquers Minnie, and because of that, Mickey tries to kill himself, failing each time. Jacob seems to have taken inspiration from there. I know the quality is abysmal, but you can see that the Mickeys are very similar. Suicide Mouse has a few games. There's Suicide Mouse made by someone around 2013 that is interesting.
That hook? Oh. Well, that's exactly what I did. Good for me!
There are Happy Mouse and Really Happy Mouse, the latter being a slightly edited version of the first one, both made by Enclave G around 2013. Finally, there's the very recent Suicide Mouse Relapse, made by Pnod on Game Jolt in 2022. Suicide Squidward was wrote by an anonymous user on 4chan back in April of 2010. The story is, again, about a creepy unreleased SpongeBob episode titled Squidward's Suicide. The protagonist explains that he was an intern at Nickelodeon Studios back in 2005. They worked directly with editors and animators and got to see new episodes days before they aired. One of these episodes was Squidward's suicide. They didn't think much of the title, as pranks like that were very common. The episode started normally, with Squidward playing the clarinet and SpongeBob bothering him. Squidward yells at SpongeBob to shut up because he has a concert that night. The concert goes badly and everyone boos at him, SpongeBob included. The protagonist notices how the crowd has very realistic red eyes. Squidward is now in his room and he starts to sob, with the sound of the wind outside becoming progressively louder. These sounds are very realistic too. They see frames of dead children with descriptions worthy of Urban's book. Squidward has realistic eyes too, crying blood while he just stares at the screen. At some point he takes a shotgun and he kills himself. I found a Reddit post from 2013 where someone claims to be the original author. They provide the screenshot I showed earlier and admit that they're proud that their story spread this much. The creepypasta was referenced in a newer SpongeBob episode from season 12, SpongeBob in Randomland, but the picture was later changed with a baby Squidward because, I don't know, moms clutched their pearls in shock, I guess. Like, don't get me wrong, it is a creepy image for a child, but SpongeBob had creepy and gross frames since it started. Many were terrified of the butterfly close-ups from Wormy or by the gorilla. What scares you is also very subjective. Personally, I was terrified of SpongeBob's dying face from the episode where he's too scared to tell Sandy he needs water to leave or something. There's an entire episode about SpongeBob and Mr. Crab hiding the body of a man they think they killed. There's also all the scenes from the episode where the Flying Dutchman is trying to scare Squidward. Like, this may not be Squidward's suicide, but I think they did something to me. About this famous picture, I couldn't find the author, but I did find this Reddit post from 2 months ago. The eyes are indeed taken from the Smile That JPEG picture, and this image took me to a How to Draw Squidward tutorial from 2008. There were some differences though, mostly the nose shape, which led me to believe that this wasn't the original image. Through some image reverse searching and after a bit of digging, I found this on the encyclopedia SpongeBobia. According to the wiki, it's promotional art used for the episode The Two Faces of Squidward, the one where Squidward becomes handsome, which aired in 2007. Squidward's suicide obviously has some fan-made recreations. The most famous one, I think, is this one. It was from 2011-2012, probably even earlier. The original one is no longer up, there's only some re-uploads. YouTube isn't too fond of suicides. Candle Cove was written in 2009 by Chris Straub, and it's part of his Local 58 TV analog horror series. The story is about a group of people chatting on a forum, talking about a pirate show called Candle Cove. As the conversation continues, the users start to remember just how weird that show was. It was poorly made in general, the characters were spooky puppets, and an entire episode was solely made of screams. The story establishes some characters: Percy the pirate, the ship Laughingstock, and the villain, the Skin Taker, the puppet of a skeleton with big eyes, a hat, and a cape. The big twist at the end is that when these kids were watching Candle Cove, they were actually staring at a static channel. In 2011, an entire wiki was dedicated to this story, the Candle Cove Wiki, where fans made up characters and locations to expand upon the original story. In 2009, Joe Jacob 666 made a recreation of the Screaming episode. Currently, you can find a re-upload, it's very funny. In 2016, the creepypasta was adapted into the first season of the anthology TV show Channel Zero. I watched the whole show and I don't know if I liked it. It's certainly unique. A thing I did like is how they recreated Candle Cove. It was perfect. The Rake was created in 2005 on 4chan by a bunch of users coming together to create monsters. The earliest posting of a creepypasta, wrote in the form of a collection of evidences and testimonies, can be found in a blog post dated 2006. The longest one happened in 2003. A woman narrates that one night, she and her husband woke up to a hairless, naked, human-like creature sitting at the foot of the bed. The creature then ran to attack their daughter and then escaped from the house. The woman's husband and daughter died as the man drove the car into the lake during the ride to the hospital. The story ends with a woman, a few years later, scared that she may wake up one night and find a rake on her bed, staring at her. Regarding this iconic photo, I found this page on Wired Web dated December of 2010 that debunks it. It was believed to be the result of a marketing campaign by Insomniac for Resistance 3, because of this tweet mentioning a Grim on the Loose. However, Insomniac already responded a day later saying that it was a joke. But puking, how can you be sure? The tweet that we're responding to is no longer up. Well, I found the link to the response tweet on this blog post wrote by Arcanor titled Insomniac Games Deny Responsibility for the Louisiana Monster Picture. It's from the same day of the tweet, so even though we can't see anymore at what exactly Insomniac was responding, I'm assuming that Arcanor could. Jav West, the author of the Wired Web post, finds the source of the picture in this thread on archerytalk.com. User HillyBillyWilly is the one that made the infamous picture. In 2023, I feel like there's no need for me to convince you that it's fake, but you can go on the Wired Web page if you want to read all the investigation. I don't know if HillyBillyWilly was thinking about the rake when he made this hoax. I know that the picture made it on a local news station though, in December of 2010.
Thanks for watching NBC 33 News Morning Edition. The time is 6:26. Okay, so you know how we ask you to send in your pics so we can put them in our newscast? Well, you got to see what one viewer claims his friend found at a hunting camp in Berwick. I really don't even know what that is. The guy who sent it in didn't want us to mention his name, but tells us this is totally for real. He says last weekend his friend's family found one of their hunting camps destroyed, but the SIM card was still there, and so was this crazy image.
The picture that got on the news has a different timestamp. I think it's because the guy that sent it also made up a different story. He said that he found one of his camps destroyed only a week before and retrieved the picture from the memory card. The rake is a recurrent presence in the ARG Everyman hybrid. He also has a few fan games. There are The Rake, Return to Asylum, and The Rake Hostel, both made by a guy named Mark in 2012. And then there's Rake, made by Consordo in 2015, where you have to hunt him in a forest. Again, I won't go into too much detail as there's already plenty of videos on Smile Dog. The creepypasta was wrote by Warren is Dead on 4chan back in 2009. He's also the author of the red hellish version of Smile Dog. He states all of this in a thread that I'll link somewhere. Here's what he had to say about the huskier version of the picture in 2018. Even though in 2019 he states that he's actually happy that there's two versions. The story is about a picture of a freaky dog called Smile.jpg. Upon watching the real picture, the demon-looking dog will haunt your dreams. The only way to stop this is to spread the word, which means send the picture to someone else. In August of 2020, a short movie called Infection, based on Smile Dog, was released. It was made by Creepypasta Films in collaboration with Warren is Dead and the No Sleep podcast.
Beware, beware, be skeptical of the smiles.
Mr. Whitemouth was created by user PerfectCircle35 in 2010. The story is about a Furby-like creature trying to manipulate a child. It starts with our protagonist recalling some childhood memories. For a few weeks he had a pretty bad fever that forced him to stay in bed, and he was bored pretty often. During one of those days, he meets Mr. Whitemouth, a small creature that looks like a Furby with a large mouth. Mr. Whitemouth acted like an imaginary friend, like he would hide under the bed every time an adult entered the room. One morning, Mr. Whitemouth tells the protagonist that he has a new game he wants to try. The creature leads the child in another room, opens a window, and explains that he likes to play pretend. And if you jump out of a window while imagining very hard a trampoline, you could actually bounce. The protagonist is like, nah, I don't think so. The following morning, Mr. Whitemouth brings a box full of knives so that the protagonist can learn how to juggle. The kid, he is horrified and refuses. Mr. Whitemouth gets very pushy and persistent. One day, the kid's mom gives him permission to go outside to get some fresh air. Here, Mr. Whitemouth shows him a trail that goes into the woods. He says that it leads to a very special place, but the protagonist isn't ready to see it yet. The Furby hopes he will be soon. Very ominous. The kid has to move, and he keeps it a secret from Mr. Widemouth, even though I think he already knew, and that's why he was being so pushy with his games. Years later, he's back to his old house that burned down in the meantime. He decides to check what's up with that trail in the woods, and he leads him to a cemetery with many children tombs.
The secret side of me, I never let you see.
Brutal Obscene Beast, wow, that's gonna be my new nickname, also known as Bob, was created by Anthony Rose on 4chan. To my understanding, there's two main Bob creepypastas, one named Another Perspective on Bob, and the other simply named Bob. Bob got much more famous, but the actual first one is Another Perspective on Bob, from 4chan. In this one there's also a slur, so, you know, slurs, 4chan, everything checks out. I don't know for sure how old they are, probably from 2011, maybe earlier. The stories are both about Bob, a humanoid creature with no arms and a dick. It's very important. He pees acid, this is also very important. The story starts with the protagonist narrating how during his 18th birthday he went to explore a cemetery at night to look for ghosts. At the cemetery, he sees a weird grey creature with no arms, Bob, and runs back into his house. A few days pass and the protagonist sees Bob again, this time in his garden, staring at his dog. The guy tries to make some noise in order to distract the monster and save his dog, but Bob pees on it. I know I said that Bob pees acid, but the dog is still safe, don't worry. A correction, Bob doesn't pee acid. He pees a green substance that smells like acid, but it actually makes its victims sick. The dog has pneumonia later, but she lives, don't worry. While the protagonist is driving, he sees Bob in the middle of the road. He tries to run over it, but turns out this creature is much more agile than it looks. The story ends with the protagonist being too afraid to sleep because he thinks Bob could break into his room whenever he wanted. The story starts with Bob breaking into our protagonist's house. Andrew reveals that the creature has been stalking him for quite some time. He arms himself with a baseball bat and goes to confront it. The two fight, and we find out that Bob is also much stronger than he looks. Andrew dies. That's it. The Seed Eater. What a splendid name. If I understood correctly, the Seed Eater was created by a bunch of users through fake testimonies posted on a blog called The Seed Eater Experiences, managed by Clifford Howry. According to this Reddit post from a year ago, the blog was the start of an ARG dedicated to this creature. Most of its satellite content, though, is lost media. From April of 2010 to January of 2012, the blog posted many stories of sightings and photos, along with the discovery of many facts about the Seed Eater. The creature has many names. User Barbara came up with Seed Eater in the very first blog post, while a later testimony calls it Rugface. The Seed Eater is a big bony creature that likes to climb trees and has to eat children to sustain itself. It seems to be wearing a mask made by pieces of skin or cloth stitched together. The testimonies suggest that there may be more than one Seed Eater, as the sightings happen in different states and countries. This is later confirmed by an email from an anonymous user who explains that they share a hive mind. Apparently they appear during or after storms with lightnings. A user suggests a theory according to which the Seed Eaters would sometimes attack or abduct adults to turn them into other Seed Eaters. This would imply that they work more like an infection rather than like animals. Apparently there are rules that Cliff is breaking with his blog, and in doing so he's disturbing the hunt. Some smile that JPEG chain-like stuff is established. It seems that these rules are very old and exist to keep people safe. By sharing these stories and the existence of the Seed Eaters, Cliff is putting others in danger, but is also keeping himself safe. Cliff says goodbye in a post from September of 2011. He shares this picture and is off to investigate in person, no longer caring if he gets attacked or not. Cliff's brother then posts that Cliff is alive even though he's badly injured. In a post from late January of 2012, Cliff explains what happened. He finds out that the Seed Eaters can talk, and Cliff's brother supposedly killed the one that attacked him, even though its body disappeared. The Seed Eater is more known for the creepypasta Through the Trees, wrote in 2011 by user Orphy666. The creepypasta is about a man encountering the Seed Eater. This man becomes obsessed with studying the creature after he sees it in his garden. He quickly becomes its servant and provides it with children. After some time, the creature tells him that children aren't enough anymore, and that it wants something bigger. I don't know if this story was directly part of the ARG or if it's just a creepypasta by itself. In the fandom, the Seed Eater is often portrayed as Eyeless Jack's pet. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but Smile Dog is often portrayed as Jeff's pet.
I bite as a hand that beats me. Slap.
Eyeless Jack was wrote by user Adzel5000 in 2012 on the official Creepypasta wiki. The picture that inspired them was made by user NickTheezy408 on DeviantArt, posted in 2009. The picture gained popularity as it was posted on a N4G thread in 2010, along with other creepy images. In 2014, when the Jeff the Killer's creepypasta was removed for being ass, Adzelf asked to remove Eyeless Jack too, knowing that it wasn't up to the wiki's standards regardless of popularity. The story starts with our protagonist Mitch ready to narrate a paranormal event he experienced. Mitch just moved in with his brother Edwin and they were both very excited. One night, Mitch heard rustling noises coming from outside, but both him and his brother dismissed it as some raccoon. The next night, Mitch heard the window open and the sound of someone entering the room. Upon investigating, he found nothing. That morning, his brother, quite shocked, made him notice a large gash on his cheek. Mitch goes to the hospital where he finds out that one of his kidneys was stolen and that the incision was sewn up. The next night, Mitch wakes up to a weird creature wearing a hoodie and a blue mask, staring at him. His eyelash and a black liquid is dripping from his empty sockets. The creature tries to attack Mitch, but he manages to escape. He runs into the woods, trips on a rock, and faints. He wakes up in the hospital where the doctor delivers the news that Edwin has been killed. Mitch goes back into the house to gather his belongings, and here he finds a half-hidden kidney with a black substance on it. The most famous origin story for Eyeless Jack is the one written by Sally's creator, Lamishimish, in 2013. Jack is a college student taking a stroll around the campus to get some fresh air. He chit-chats for a bit with a classmate, Jenny, then as it starts to rain, he runs back inside. Jack has a nightmare about some cultists chanting and praising Chernobog. That morning, he explains his dream to his roommate Greg, but then simply dismisses it as a weird nightmare. Jenny invites him out, and Jack says he'll come once he's done with the studying. When the girl leaves, he wonders how she knew which dorm room was his one. When Jack is outside, Jenny basically forces him to join her and her friends for a walk in the woods. Apparently, they turned a cave into a place to hang out. Even though Jack feels a bit uncomfortable, he has a nice time. Suddenly, another storm breaks out, and everyone quickly leaves. Jack is back into his room and Greg warns him about Jenny, explaining that she is a weirdo interested in cults. That night, Greg wakes Jack up at around 2 AM because he saw someone in the woods lighting fires. Jack goes to check, because obviously, he reaches the cave and sees many students dressed up in robes, wearing blue featureless masks with holes for the eyes. The students chant the name of Chernobog and they talk about the sacrifice. Jenny surprises him from behind and he gets hit on the head with a rock. Jack is sacrificed, Jenny removes his eyes and pours tar into the sockets. The ritual is over and guess what? A demon actually responds and possesses Jack. His skin is now black and he has sharp pointy teeth. He kills every single student and steals their kidneys and one of the masks.
Got a secret cage that's worth its while.
Sally was created by user Lamishimish on DeviantArt back in 2012. In 2017, she posted an updated reference sheet for the character, and in 2020 she wrote a remake of the story. The story starts with 8 years old Sally playing in the garden with her friends. She's described as a very sweet, polite, and honest child. Her mom calls her for lunch and tells her that Uncle Johnny will be coming over. Johnny arrives and he seems normal until he takes Sally to bed after dinner. You read the trigger warnings, you know what happens. It's not described or anything, just strongly implied. After a few days, Sally's mom notices that she's not behaving like her usual cheerful self and asks what's wrong. Sally clearly states what happened, there isn't much room for interpretation, but the mom doesn't get it. I guess she's in denial or something. Johnny overhears a conversation between Sally's parents where they're like, yeah, Sally had a nightmare, like she said he touched her. What who the hell is he? I don't know, but like it was just a nightmare, so like I understand that accepting that a family member is indeed a pedophile is not easy, but man, this is a 2 pieces puzzle. Sally is the happiest kid on the planet. Uncle Johnny comes along, Sally is depressed and is talking about someone touching her. I wonder who he might be. Johnny lies about going to the store and takes Sally with him with an excuse. I don't know what his plan was, but he kills her. The story ends with Sally, now a ghost, hunting her all the house, saying her catchphrase, "Play with me." The first part of the story is pretty much the same, only with more words. In this version, Johnny's abuses go on for 4 years and Sally is too scared to say anything to her parents, so at least they don't look like complete idiots this time. One night, Johnny is trying to enter her room, but Sally rebels and holds the door handle with all her strength. Eventually, Johnny leaves. The second he is alone with her again, though, he threatens her. Thankfully, Sally's friends arrive, preventing him from doing anything else. During a slumber party with her 2 best friends, Sally just breaks down, unable to keep the secret any longer. Her friends listen in horror and then they suggest to expose her uncle during her birthday, so she will be around many more people. Sadly, Johnny eavesdrops this conversation. Her birthday arrives a week later, during which nothing bad happened, but Sally can't help but feel suspicious. As if her sixth sense is telling her that her uncle is plotting something and she's in danger. She is! During the party, her mom notices that she forgot to buy ice cream and Johnny offers to go to the store, asking if Sally can come along so that he doesn't buy the wrong tastes. Sally reluctantly accepts and I'm like, really? You send the birthday girl away from her own party to go buy ice cream with her uncle? Alright, like ask the girls and write down a list or something, whatever. Sally makes her best friend's promise to tell the truth to her parents if she doesn't come back. I don't know, I feel like this may already be a good time to try, but I was also confused as to why she doesn't ask her besties to come along, but maybe it's because she thinks that at this point her uncle is ready to do anything, and so he could potentially kill them too. Sally dies and becomes a ghost. Eventually her uncle is arrested. Sally's dad starts to think that his wife is going insane as she keeps seeing Sally in the house. So they move out, not before visiting her grave and leaving a teddy bear by the tombstone. The story ends the same way as the 2012 version. If you're feeling sad, Lamishimish drew this little comic in 2012 where Slenderman helps Sally get her revenge. So, the drama, it's kind of a mess. Apparently, Lamishimish used to draw not safe for work stuff with Sally and other pastas around 2015/2016. She would use an aged up version of Sally, but people didn't like it, and so she deleted all of her poor drawings. I found like a repost on Holy Shit Angel's Tumblr that is honestly kinda vague. It states that, according to Lamishimish DeviantArt's comments, she only aged Sally to 12 and occasionally 16 at the time of her poor stuff. Which comments? I don't know. I don't want to sift every single Sally post hoping to find them, honestly. I found this comment from 2012 where she states that there's a canon 12 years old version of Sally and one made specifically for shipping whose age is not specified. I found this Tumblr blog from 2013 which is like a Ask Sally kind of thing managed by Lamishimish. And in the About section she specifies it's a blog for both canon Sally and older Sally. Again, it's not specified how old she is exactly, but I found this collection of sketches. where she states that she ships a 16/17 years old Jeff with a 15/16 years old Sally. And the spiciest drawing is this one. You can say that it's weird for a 20/21 years old to draw minors smooching, but come on, I don't care that much. Sorry. It's difficult for me to pretend I'm invested in this. Now, Holy Shit Angel's post shows some of her not safe for work art, but the thing is that there's no way to know for sure if the characters depicted are adults or not. There's a screenshot of this comment that is so out of context that I genuinely have no clue what the fuck Lamishimish is talking about. It's right after some Jeff and Sally porn, but I do not think that Sally is 12. Like, at all, by the way she's drawn. This is a comment about the situation wrote by Lamishimish in 2022 under the remake of Play With Me.
I already posted this in part 1, but I'm going to post it again so you can read it, just in case you didn't see it. So this was an apology they posted on their Instagram that they deleted because of the endless amount of harassment they received for it. I underlined the important stuff. Now let's get into a post that was found on their old Tumblr. So the real important stuff is this, down here. So down here they address her they are accused of drawing child... you know what? So people accused Mishi of drawing art, NSFW art, of their own character while the character was 16. But here they say that the character was never 16 and everybody drawn in the NSFW art was aged up to be 21. Now again, they own this character and they have multiple variations of this character that's different ages. They have every right to do this. Like, it's their own character.
So, what do I think about aging up characters? I don't think there's something inherently wrong with that. I think it's up to individual sensitivity, honestly, and I don't think it makes you a pedophile. Personally, I do think it's weird to see a character that's a child or a minor and be like, I want to draw something of that. But at the same time, I can't ignore the fact that you're going out of your way to not draw child porn. Like, aging up a character kinda defeats the point if you're a pedo. You know what I mean? What I can say is that Lamishimish's attitude definitely didn't help her case. Like, his response is hilarious. Also, I agree with Holy Shit Angel's post regarding her having permission from Jaduzable to draw Ben and Sally together. She did reach out to him, but nowhere in these messages does she mention porn. Because I can guarantee you that the response would have been different. More like a, sorry, what the fuck? So, if no one else has more like solid evidence, this is all I can say. The fandom kept bringing up this drama, and I think fans are particularly upset with Lamishimish because we're talking about Sally. Like, her entire story is about this little girl being sexually assaulted and murdered, turning into a sad, lonely ghost desperate for a playmate. I think one of the reasons she became so popular is because people stuck around to see her happy and getting along with the other pastas. Her ship with Ben was so loved because it was generally very cute and wholesome. Seeing two dead kids getting along was just sweet. Seeing porn of her just didn't sit right with people in general. I can understand. But I will not call Lamishimish a pedophile over this. And you need to be careful with words like that. So, the creator of Clockwork posted a journal in 2018 where he's very vocal about being done with the Creepypasta fandom. He says that Clockwork's story had many personal details and it came from a moment in his life where he just wasn't doing well. He comments about the toxicity of the fandom and how he feels as if his character has been stolen from him. And now just her name is enough to cause anxiety. So I won't say his name as he explicitly asked to be left alone regarding this character and I don't want to tarnish his social spaces. I won't summarize the story either as it contains many uncomfortable topics, truly uncomfortable, and if these topics come from personal experiences too, I'm just not gonna read the story. What I can say is that she was created back in 2013 and was shipped with Tikitobi by the fandom. The clock that replaces one of her eyes, that's a thing she did to herself at the end of the story while reasoning about time. There is this common theme of kids posting stuff online without fully grasping the implications of the internet and then subsequently not being able to handle being popular because they're kids. There's also the common theme of kids not being able to enjoy media in a healthy way.
So now you see I've gone completely out of my mind.
Zero was created by user Zombie Punk Rat on DeviantArt, I think around 2014, maybe? Zombie Punk Rat's account was deleted, so on the Creepypasta Files wiki there's this updated reference sheet from 2017. The story is about Alice, a young girl who gets bullied a lot and likes to spend her time imagining many friends. One of these friends is Zero, the first imaginary friend she came up with. One day, Alice feels this urge to step in the middle of the road, and a truck that is about to run over her manages to swerve and it rolls down a hill and crashes into a tree. In the truck, there were her parents and they die. Alice's neighbor hosts her. I don't think that's how it works, but he sucks and he's an alcoholic. Many years pass and Alice forgets about Zero. One day in class, she cuts her hand with a razor blade, I don't know where she found it, and is rushed to the nurse's office. Alice has a real friend now, and one day something possesses her when two kids try to bully her and she beats the shit out of them. When she comes to her senses, she runs away, terrified, back to her house. She goes in the bathroom and her reflection in a mirror speaks to her, asking if she remembers her best friend. During the next days, Alice feels as if someone is replacing her personality and taking over her mind. She becomes mean and violent to others and she gets expelled. One day she blacks out and when she wakes up again, the news are talking about the murder of a man whose head still hasn't been found. Alice finds a sledgehammer covered in blood and a severed head of her neighbor. In an attempt to run out of the house, she slips and falls down the stairs, knocking her head in the process. When she regains consciousness, she is in a room filled with mirrors. Zero is able to take over Alice's body, and there's a very funny scene where Zero bleaches her eyes out so that she can't see colors anymore. Not to turn blind, just to see everything in black and white. And it works. The story ends with Zero killing Anne.
Angel of darkness,
We're back to Yaguyi. Judge Angels was created back in October of 2013 with her reference sheet. She was canonically shipped with Bloody Painter since the beginning. In October of 2013, Yaguyi also posted her creepypasta. The story starts with the judge, Mr. Clark, waiting for the birth of his child. A nurse says that the child is special in some way and that Mr. Clark has to come see for himself. The child is a little girl and her eyes are completely black. Mr. Clark is horrified and I love that his first response is to accuse his wife of cheating. Like, yeah honey, I cheated on you with Satan, sorry. The man decides to homeschool the little girl, her name is Dina, and to hide her from the world. Some years later, Dina is now 13, she doesn't like to talk and the relationship with her dad isn't good, because he still sees her as a monster. On the other hand, her mom doesn't care about her appearance and is always on her side. Dina likes to sneak into her dad's collection room to stare at a beautiful silver sword. According to a legend, the sword belonged to an angel who lost it during a war. Dina's mom comes home with groceries and her husband demands to know what she bought. She got food and he gets mad that she wants to feed Dina? Like, what's your plan, Mr. Judge? You didn't want to abandon her, you aren't killing her, you kept her around for 13 years, but now you're mad that you have to feed her? That night, Dina convinces her mom to run away with her during Christmas Eve. Dina sneaks outside in an antique store to buy a pendant for her mom. She's sure that no one saw her, but apparently someone took a photo of her. Mr. Clark is furious and locks Dina in a medieval dungeon he built under the house. Okay, weirdo. Mr. Clark's bodyguard, Maisha, took the picture and apparently her and the judge fuck. The woman says that she has permission to kill Dina whenever she wants. Then why is she still alive? Dina loses it. She starts to talk about herself as if she's a real angel who has to punish guilty people. She kills Maisha. She escapes the dungeon, steals the silver sword and finds her mother, dead. She kills her father and she's off in the world being crazy. In November of 2013, Yaguyi posted another short story related to Judge Angels. It's a very short story about Dina wanting to be loved or saved by someone. I don't know what happened to the text, but someone in the comments rewrote it. From February of 2014 to October of 2016, Yaguchi posted a comic adaptation of Judge Angel's story that was left unfinished. The last Judge Angel's drawing she posted is Halloween themed and it's from November of 2016. So, with Bloody Painter's reboot, he's now like 25. In a comment from 2019, DeLucat confirms that the Bloody Painter x Judge Angel's ship is still canon. So I saw some comments from fans waiting for an update over Judge Angel's age. It won't happen, because Yaguchi hasn't posted anything since 2017, plus she already provided a canon age chart back in 2013. So if you still want to ship her and Helen, just use one of these versions, guys, come on. Hoboheart was created back in August of 2014 by Chris Osfulton. His first appearance is this drawing titled Hoboheart, if you want it, I'll give it to you. In October of 2014, his more canon appearance was posted in a drawing titled Hobo Hand Heart. In January of 2015, Chris posted the first Hoboheart creepypasta. The story starts with detectives discussing about a murderer on the loose whose modus operandi is removing the heart of the victim and leaving the heart of another previous victim on the crime scene. We skip to a couple of teenagers ready to have sex in their car. It's night and they're in the middle of the woods. And like in a slasher from the 80s, they get murdered. We find out many things about Hoboheart. He stores the hearts that he steals in his own chest. He has a dog that follows him around. Upon seeing him, the victims feel a deep sadness and he uses the hair of its victims to stitch his own chest injury. One of his catchphrases is, "Do you value your heart?" In February of 2015, Chris posted a second Hoboheart creepypasta. The story starts with Cece walking back home after school. She meets a dog on the way, and while following him, she reaches Hoboheart. He is a bit surprised that Cece doesn't look sad, because all those who meet him are sad. Cece asks him his name, and he responds that he doesn't have one, as he is a gambling, created for a specific purpose. Cece plays along, and she comments that it's sad that he doesn't have a name. Hoboheart comments that his heart has no place to call home, and Cece decides to name him Hoboheart because of it. The next day, the two meet again and they hang out at the park. They start to like each other, and with Valentine's Day around the corner, Cece asks Hoboheart to be her Valentine. He's confused and she explains that a Valentine is someone you're willing to give your heart to because you know they'll protect it. Obviously, she means give figuratively, but Hoboheart has a gift too, and he leads the girl to a beautiful gigantic tree. She kisses him, very cute. The boy then reveals that the tree is his purpose, and he has to provide nourishment to it. He then forbids her from touching it, and the two walk back to her house. The couple meets Cece's friend. Hoboheart disappears into the shadows before he can be seen, and the friend is worried about the disappearance of two other girls, also friends of Cece. Cece starts to feel sick, and her friend suggests that she should spend some time away from her mysterious lover, as she has been very distant from everything else since she met him. Cece starts hanging around with some dude named Jim, and during a party while they're making out, she hears Hoboheart's dog barking outside. Shaken, she leaves the party and walks back home. The next day is Valentine's Day, and Cece and her friend go to the mall. Everyone seems very sad, and suddenly the friend starts to sob uncontrollably. Hoboheart reveals himself. Cece tells him he has to leave, and he responds like, "But it's Valentine's Day, didn't you want my heart?" She refuses him again, and he leaves. That night, she is at the movie theater with her friend, Jim, and another guy. When it's time to go home, Cece doesn't want to remain alone with Jim, but her friend sucks, so Jim tries to rape her, but Hoboheart saves the day. He gives her his heart as he promised, and Cece faints. The next day, she wakes up in her bed as if nothing happened. Her parents tell her that her friend apparently didn't make it home, and everyone is kinda worried. Good riddance! In her bedroom, she finds the heart that Hobo gave her, and she runs outside to find him. She runs to the tree, which is now black and dying, and she crawls inside. She finds the bodies of her friends and their hearts being absorbed by the tree, and Hobo half dead in a corner. He explains that the tree needs 6 bodies once a month, otherwise, demons. She was supposed to be the 6th one, but Hobo couldn't kill her. She suggests he uses his art, the one he gifted her, and is like, "What? I gave it to you because you told me you would protect it." Feeling betrayed, he gets mad and takes her heart. Instead of feeding it to the tree, he places it in his own chest. He leaves her his old heart and sets the tree on fire, freeing the demons. In February of 2015, Chris posted a Ask Me for Hobo where he responded to many questions. In September of 2015, he posted Hobo Heart's reference sheet. In February of 2016, Chris collaborated with Mr. Creepypasta to post a reading of a new Hobo Heart story called Open Wounds. To my knowledge, the story has never been posted in text format, which is a peculiar choice. In the story, the detective and the police are still investigating on Cupid, that's how they call Hobo, and they found 2 hearts that never matched a body. Some girl named Sarah dies, killed by a man with golden eyes who murdered his family a few weeks prior. Hobo is there and he kills the man to take his heart. On the crime scene, Cupid's modus operandi reminds a police guy of Gamberlings, and he suggests that the killer may be convinced that he is a Gamberling. Meanwhile, the detective's wife is having an affair with some David dude. Hobo appears to steal hearts, but David attacks him. He also has golden eyes and he kills the woman. So remember the demons that Hobo freed by setting the tree on fire? Yeah, they're going around possessing people now. A policeman at the station gets possessed and he tries to steal those hearts I mentioned before. Hobo Heart is back at the tree he burned and he realizes that Cece's body isn't there. The demons turn Cece into a Gamberling and she attacks him to take his heart. While fighting, the girl remembers the love she felt for him and stops. She screams as if someone or something is trying to prevent her from remembering, and she runs into the woods. He follows her and she, while being maneuvered by someone else, leads him to a familiar house, the detective's house. Meanwhile, the detective feared that Cupid could be after his wife, and return home along with an officer. They find the possessed policeman eating the heart of David and the corpse of the detective's wife. Possessed man kills the officer and Cece rushes to steal his heart or something. I get easily distracted with videos, sorry. The dead officer gets possessed by a demon and he shoots Cece in her heart. Hobo attacks the possessed officer and, destroys his body. He then takes the wife's heart and gives it to Cece. The story ends by stating that 2 of the demons are dead, so I guess destroying the human host kills them too, but 4 other demons remain. The last Hobo Heart drawing that Chris posted is this one from February of 2021. Kagekao was created by Jinbe Zamezama, I'll call him Ren from now on, back in 2012. His first appearance is his first reference sheet from December of 2012. He's a trickster demon who loves wine and speaks in Japanese. In January of 2013, Ren posted his catchphrase, "You mad, bro?" Ren posted many stories about Kagekao. I'll summarize a couple of them so that you get the gist of the character. In February of 2013, he posted the first Kagekao creepypasta. The story starts with our protagonist, Mark, hanging around on the roof of his apartment building at night. He accidentally pushes an empty cardboard box down the roof and the box hits a person that was walking on the sidewalk. Sadly for Mark, it's not a person, it's Kagekao. The demon climbs the wall and quickly reaches the man. In Japanese, he asks if he wants to play. Mark doesn't understand and he runs back into the building. He builds up the courage to open the door again, checking if the demon is still there or if he just imagined it. Kagekao slams the door into his face, laughing. Mark wakes up in his bed, not remembering how he got there. He tries to pour himself some juice, but someone made cats in the carton and the juice spills everywhere. The man hears someone laughing again. Later in the afternoon, Mark tries to drink some beer, but the content of all the bottles has been replaced with water. A bottle of wine and a wine glass also disappeared. Mark finds Kagekao sitting on the couch watching TV and drinking wine. The man runs back into the kitchen, arms himself with a knife, and when he's back in the living room, the demon is gone. The man ponders whether or not he's going insane, and he concludes that it must be all the stress accumulated after a huge fight with his girlfriend. He decides to go to her house and apologize. He's about to take with him a bottle of champagne that he bought as a gift, but he can't find it. Once at her house, he finds the front door open and a bottle of champagne on the dining table, along with the apology note he wrote. His girlfriend is dead on the floor. Kagekao is at the window, he mimics her voice, mocking Mark, and explains, in Japanese, that he poisoned the champagne. Mark takes his girlfriend's gun and runs back into his apartment. Kagekao is already waiting for him. The man tries to shoot him but fails each time. When he's out of bullets, he throws the gun at him and Kagekao responds by throwing the wine bottle. The demon kills the man and carves the word boring into his forehead. In February of 2013, Ren posted another Kagekao story. The story starts with Scott and Will camping in the woods in a cabin. A thief has been stealing alcohol, magazines, and beer from them, and Will is determined to catch him. He scatters foothold traps around the cabin and waits for his prey. For a few days, the traps only catch wild animals, but one morning, Scott finds Kagekao, trying to free his leg by forcing the trap open. Scott offers to help, but the demon is like, "No pal, I got this," in Japanese. He thinks the trap was some sort of game, and he declares that next time, Scott will play. The man is quite shocked by this encounter, and he gaslights himself into thinking it didn't happen. Kagekao starts to hunt Scott, appearing only to him and making him question his sanity. One day, Scott chases the demon in the woods and he steps into one of the traps. Kagekao reveals that he can speak English and orders him to play the game right, like he did. Eventually, both of the men die by falling into bigger bear traps that the demon stole from somewhere. From May of 2013, Ren posted his longest work of fiction, Forgotten Past, a story divided in 2 parts, one made by 16 chapters and the other made by 10. In July of 2013, Ren posted the different designs of Kagekao. In December of 2015, he posted a redesign of Kagekao's clothes. The latest Kagekao-related drawing I could find is from December of 2018. Kagekao was mostly shipped with Suicide Sadie until the others decided to move on with other ships. Kage was shipped with a Ren's friend version of Jeff the Killer. Okay, interesting. Also, I found out that Ren is the author of one of my favorite Zago drawings. Well, look at that. Sadie was created by Pancakes. I'm just gonna call them Pancakes, hoping they don't mind. Sadie has been around since 2013 for sure, but on Pancake's profile I couldn't find anything prior to 2015. According to this comment, they also lost all of their old artworks, so that sucks. Pancakes revamped Sadie because apparently they were critiqued for her old design. And in September of 2015, they posted a newer reference sheet. The major differences are that she is now in black and white and her appearance is less gory. I couldn't find her older origin story, it's probably summarized in some wiki page. I also found a fan-made origin story that is kind of a rip-off of Carrie. Even though there isn't a properly written creepypasta, in a comment, Pancakes provides a very quick summary of her current backstory. Pause and read. Suicide Sadie is canonically shipped with Roadwalker, another ghost lady made by House of the Goat Mother on Toy House. The Blue Man was created by Dylan Charles back in 2009. He posted the story on the Icor Falls website. The story is made of 3 different encounters with the Blue Man. The story starts with Sam driving through fields. He sees a man all dressed in blue walking on the side of the road and decides to ask him if he wants a ride. The Blue Man smiles, and apparently his smile is so creepy that Sam steps on the gas and leaves him behind. No, he got scared because the eyes of the man were completely black. Sam is possessed after looking at the Blue Man, and he kills his wife, committing suicide immediately later. Now we follow Franklin, an old man always at the bar, always drinking and blabbing about anything that came to his mind. One particular night, he gets kicked out of the bar after he drank too much, and the old man attempts to drive back home. Franklin dozes off for a second and he runs over a man. He slams his foot on the brakes, but it's too late. Franklin goes to check the man, but he's already standing up and walking away, unfazed. The old man is relieved, but he still goes after him to be sure that he's alright. He catches a glimpse of his face, sees his eyes and smile, and runs away, terrified, leaving his car at the side of the road. Franklin becomes obsessed with his hands being dirty. He tries to clean them with boiling water, but it's not enough. He lights his hands on fire. His story ends with him sitting in the bar, completely silent, pulling glasses closed with a hook. Finally, we have Mick, always in trouble along with his pals, Deke and Hugh. They were criminals, nothing too severe, but enough to be sent to juvie. One day, though, a cop found enough pot on Mick to send him to prison for a couple of years. When he's back, he's very different. He's way more reckless and violent, and whenever he would hang out with his pals, they would just drive around aimlessly. During one of these rides, Mick spots the Blue Man. They follow him, Mick walks up to him, pushes him, and threatens him. The Blue Man turns to look at him. Hugh and Deke can't see his face because it's too dark, but Mick stares into those black eyes and starts to laugh uncontrollably. He runs back to the car and his friends follow, quite worried. The next day, Mick robs a bank, and he is stopped only when 10 cops open fire on him. I added the Blue Man because it inspired a song made by Madame Macabre for Mr. Creepypasta's birthday. I don't know if Mr. Creepypasta's character was also inspired by the Blue Man, but I know that it was designed by Silence the Requiem on DeviantArt. Zalgo was created by the Something Awful animator Shmurky. In July of 2004, he posted on his website some parodies of all the strips. They're quite edgy, vulgar, and gory, and the entity Zalgo is mentioned in a couple of them. Because of its easy to replicate nature, Zalgo quickly became a meme, and many people made their own Zalgofied strips. Zalgo is an entity whose coming is predicted yet inevitable. He doesn't have a specific form, and he corrupts everything he touches. Mostly comics and internet memes. In 2011, Shmurky posted a flash animation about Zalgo. Currently, there's a YouTube re-upload from 2020. With his spread, Zalgo's most known phrase became, "He comes, Zalgo." People also started to use scrambled text to signify his presence. The Zalgo invocation was posted on YouTube. The oldest upload I found is from 2010 by Vladimir Visco. I was terrified of this video. At some point, the fandom felt the need to shape Zalgo into something easily usable for fanarts and fanfics, and so he became a demon. In 2013, user Chris Phoenix wrote the creepypasta He Comes, based on Zalgo. The story is about a mechanic narrating the weird behavior of his employee, Neil. It all started when the protagonist left him in charge of the place for a day. When he returned, Neil was covered in oil and unresponsive. For the next days, things seemed to return somewhat normal, other than Neil being unusually quiet. One day, Neil brings him lunch, some Chinese food, and when the protagonist opens the soy sauce packet, the content moves as if it's alive, and small tendrils come out of it. He doesn't eat, and he questions his sanity. The next week, the protagonist is waiting for clients when he looks at his bulletin board to read some of the comic strips he pinned there. The strips have been Zalgofied, and in a panic, he throws away the entire board. The protagonist starts to be hunted by Zalgo. Every person he encounters watches him with pitch black eyes, murmuring he comes. Even his wife's pregnancy and delivery gets Zalgofied. The protagonist runs out of the hospital and starts driving, desperate to leave that town. The story ends with scrambled words creeping into the text, and the protagonist gets captured by Zalgo. So, about Shmurky, I highly suggest watching this video from Magic Mush. I'll summarize in 3 sentences what he did before disappearing from the face of the earth. he slowly morphed into Mickey Mouse. He would hide his girlfriend's pills for her schizophrenia after an argument. He role-played diaper fetish porn and pedophilia with a friend he groomed. Working on this video was such a great idea. Shadow Lurker was created by user Stingray. In June of 2011, this image was posted on 4chan, where the horrifying house guest / unwanted house guest / uninvited guest / never alone meme was born. Some days later, Stingray posted the same image on their personal Tumblr blog. Currently, this blog doesn't exist anymore, but in July of 2011, Stingray made another Tumblr blog dedicated to the unwanted house guest. That is still up. Currently, the unwanted house guest is a singer, so you can check his stuff on YouTube. Before we start, I have to mention a couple of things. In the Creepypasta fandom, some headcanons became very prominent and shared among fanfics. All the major Creepypasta characters live in the Creepypasta Mansion, a gigantic house in the middle of the woods. Slenderman is often the mommy / boss of the other Creepypastas. Zalgo is often the one true major villain. The human world and the Creepypasta world are separate, and many creators also added a specific third dimension specifically for Zalgo. The Creepypasta characters often have to disguise themselves to walk among humans in the human world. Every creator added their own spin or headcanon, but these are the most generic rules. Pretty much all Creepypasta comics share the same problems. There are too many characters, the plots are a bit all over the place, and the pacing tends to be weird. Consider that the authors were mostly teens trying to fit their passions with school and work. I Eat Pasta for Breakfast was created by Chibiworks back in 2013. The story is about Lazari, the half-human, half-demon, unaware daughter of Zalgo that ends up under the protection of Slenderman. During the story, she realizes that Slenderman may not have the best intentions for her and she runs away. The most famous Creepypasta presents are Jeff, Eyeless Jack, Slenderman, Masking Hoodie, Zalgo the Rake, Jane, only to be killed off screen, Tiki Toby, Ben, Sally, and the Puppeteer. Among the most relevant Chibiworks OCs, there are Lulu, Stripes, Bleeding Man, Roger, Hip, Hype, Lazari, of course, and Sadia. There are many more, but I'm already at page 69 of my script, so... Chibiworks posted many reference sheets for Lulu, the oldest from 2013, this from 2014, and the most recent one from 2017. I'm sorry for this harsh opinion, but for me, this Lulu's backstory reaches trauma porn territory a little bit. Lulu is this beautiful girl with heterochromia who gets bullied, beaten, insulted, she's full of cuts and injuries, even her name comes from an insult. Her naked body is exposed, a guy pretends to want to go out with her only to then rape her. Just too much of everything for the sake of writing a tragic story. Not Chibiworks' best character, in my humble opinion. On the contrary, I really like Stripes and her design. Stripes is a demon and Lazari's sister. Here's an old reference sheet from 2014 and the one from 2016. Bleeding Man is like a zombie and he's a friend of both Lulu and Roger. He was killed by someone that broke into his house. Roger is the host of a creature called Shadow Walker. Here's the evolution of his character sheet from 2013, 2014, and 2016. On February of 2014, Chibiworks posted his creepypasta, It Lives in the Shadows. Roger explains that he met the Shadow Walker when he was 10 and living in the woods. The creature moves into the darkness and his possession causes an insatiable hunger. Eventually, Roger eats his mom after his dad already died from drunk driving. He leaves the murder as one of the many weird nightmares starring the shadow creature that he had, so he doesn't piece together that it's his fault. Roger is sent to his aunt and he spends 12 years of his life so detached that he remembers almost nothing. One day, his aunt dies in her sleep, Roger calls an ambulance and he drives away, uncaring. He moves into a new town and he finds a job and a girlfriend. You can guess what happens. He hits his girlfriend, and this time the creature appears to him, demanding that he keeps him fed. Otherwise, the creature will dispose of him and find a new host. Hype is some sort of lab experiment, and Sadia is a demon and Lazari's cousin, I think. Sadia helps Lazari to communicate with her inner demon during the comic. I Eat Pasta for Breakfast hasn't been updated since 2018. From January of 2018, Chibiworks started a reboot of the comic with a lovely style, these pages are gorgeous, called The Demon Within, where they removed all references to Creepypasta characters. The original characters remain, like Lazari, Stripes, and Lulu, but Zira replaces Slenderman and Zachary replaces Eyeless Jack, for example. The comic hasn't been updated since 2019. It's safe to assume that Chibiworks is done with the Creepypasta fandom, and they're currently working on a new comic, Withdraw, on Webtoon. Pasta Monsters was created by Comic Kid in 2011. The story is about Smile Dog ending up in the human world and the adventures that Jeff and his pals have to go through to save him, all while a weird green substance seeps into the underworld. The most famous creepypastas present are Jeff, Smile Dog, Ben, Slenderman, Zalgo, Seed Eater, Shadow Lurker, The Rake, Bob, Eyeless Jack, and Mr. Whitemouth. Comic Kid's original characters present are Greenie the Cat, Mrs. Pencilneck, and the human Lara. We see the origin of Greenie during the comic, while Mrs. P is a witch that can regenerate. Lara is the human that cares for Smile Dog while he's in the human world. There were long pauses between updates, but the latest one is from May of this year. Personally, I loved the Comic Kid style since the beginning, and it kept improving as time went on. Look at this page where Ben loses his marbles.
Nice.
The Seer was created by Madame Macabre in 2012. The story is about Corbin discovering the truth about herself, her powers, and her duties as a seer. The most famous creepypastas present are Jeff, Slenderman, Masky and Hoodie, and Zalgo. Madame Macabre's original characters present are Corbin and Dr. Locklear, even though the latter is only mentioned. There's also this Scarecrow lady created by Xiphileomia in 2012. Her thing is that she was the best friend of a young farmer boy, but said boy grew older and eventually stopped talking to her. One day he walks up to her again, he apologizes by saying he was busy and talks about this girl he met. The Scarecrow kills the girl so that her farmer boy can no longer be busy. Dr. Locklear's first appearance is this drawing from 2012. In January of 2013, Madame Macabre posted his creepypasta. The story starts with our doctor being drugged and forced into a straitjacket. It's been months since he was locked away, and when the drugs were off, the man wonders who could have done this to him, as he has always worked for the benefit of his patients. The rest of the story is about his carefully planned escape. While he's trying to retrieve his clothes and personal effects, he finds his files. In horror, he sees pictures of corpses and a police report. Apparently, Dr. Locklear used to abduct evil people, like sex offenders, to steal their organs and then use them for his actual patients. I get it, but he has a god complex. Locklear remembers everything he has done, and he decides to keep doing it. On the Creepypasta Wiki and on Madame Macabre's YouTube channel, you can also find the return of Dr. Locklear and Mind Games. In The Return of Dr. Locklear, the Doctor kidnaps a man whose innocence and destiny are left ambiguous, and in Mind Games, Detective Bernadette is introduced. She starts to investigate on Locklear by herself after being let down by her department, but the Doctor makes her question her beliefs. From January of 2017, Madame Macabre posted a Locklear comic, but it was put on hiatus shortly after. In 2018, another Locklear story was posted called Apex, where he abducts a girl that swears to be innocent, but during the story we realize that it may not be the case at all. The Seer comic hasn't been updated since 2014. On Madame Macabre's YouTube channel you can find readings of the comic. I'm gonna be honest, I kinda hope that someday the Seer will come back, because it seems to be one of the Creepypasta comics with more plot structure out there. Also, I wanna see Corbin and Locklear interact. Just for fun, here are some other songs and fanworks that I used to watch or listen to religiously. There's the lyrics video of the Slenderman song made by Zip Zipper in 2011.
Slenderman, Slenderman, all the children try to...
Zip Zipper made a remake of the song only a month ago, by the way, called Darkest Suit and Tie.
Go back, rewind, did you see?
Then there's the Slender rap made by JT Music in 2012.
My bowel movement had a mind of...
There's Markiplier's Slenderman song made in 2013 that didn't need to be this good.
Your mind will escape this time. Feel their children.
There's September, Jeff the Killer PMV made by Kiyosin Alex in 2014. The song is September made by The Living Tombstone in 2011 and it's a My Little Pony song. I did wonder why it said every pony at some point. There's Every Single Creepypasta song made by Madame Macabre. There's Jeff vs. Slenderman with Light 'Em Up in the background made by Ciel in 2013. This video! Oh my god! I remember that there was a period in my life when I would watch it every single day. This video did something to me. I remember that there was also a comic that continued the story starring the Demon Lady, but it's no longer up on DeviantArt. There's the Creepypasta horror show made by Koichiaki777 back in 2015. The song is It's a B-Movie from Brave Little Toaster. They had to make a new channel, so these are re-uploads from their new channel. I remember being devastated when I couldn't find it online anymore. There's another Jeff the Killer animation made by Probably Not Ash in 2013 as a school project with Awoken in the background. Awoken was made by H8 Seed and Wooden Toaster in 2012 and it's a sort of sequel to Rainbow Factory. Then there's Slenderman Dances for His $20 posted by Termitator in 2011. The video plays $20 by Ron Browds in the background and it's a loop of this GIF. The meme spawned from this video by Avocado showing a Marble Hornets clip of Slenderman while the song plays in the background. In Slender the 8 Pages there was also a $20 mode which made the song play every time you looked at Slenderman.
That's what...
Then there's Creepypasta Anime posted by Dealcat. I think this is a re-upload because I'm pretty sure the video is older. And finally, the Creepypasta animations posted by Lichi Chong from 2014. Creepypastas by Killer. So, this is all I had to say for this video. If you reached the end, congrats! Consider leaving a like and subscribing. If you want to share your experience with the Creepypasta fandom, go for it. If you want to insult me because your favorite character wasn't mentioned, go for it. Creepypastas made way for other horror phenomena, stuff like Five Nights at Freddy's, horror games for children, the Backrooms, and the analog horror series, all dead or in the process of dying. But I hope this video still managed to be informative and a nice nostalgia trip. In the Creepypasta subreddit, people are still posting horror stories, Friday Night Funkin' mods sparked some interest for some of the characters, so Creepypasta fans are still out there.